Hi guys, and welcome to the Jinn and Tonic show. We help Muslims and non-Muslims alike to understand and handle Islam in the 21st century. We consider ourselves to be decent human beings, so we condemn categorically any abuse, oppression, misogyny, slavery, violence, anything like that. We do embrace, however, free speech and also criticism, even if it is directed at us, if it is factual and constructive criticism. We focus on Islam exclusively. So if you're curious about anything Islam, you've come to the right place. Now, we don't attack, which is aggressive, destructive and antagonistic, neither Islam nor Muslims. We ask questions and show facts. We refute false claims and present the reality of Islam, which is political Islam. We inspect, investigate, research, analyze, and then report and critique on Islam, the ideology, not the people. Now, the live stream goes to YouTube and Facebook, and there are three ways that you can participate in this. Either you join us in the live written chat, you can join the panel during the live show, or later on watch and comment the archive. And anyone can join to comment, critique, contribute, or question. This is not a Dawah channel with censorship. Don't go to Patreon, don't go to PayPal. Everything here is free. The way we work is usually we have some news, some Krazy Komments, a segment where we go and read the Quran, and then a discussion on the theme of the month, followed by integrating the live chat, ending with a Hadith of the week. If this is not enough Islam for you, there's still the Discord channel where you can discuss with us without anything being recorded. See you later and enjoy the Jinn and Tonic show. Wow. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, I don't know, I love this. Pio, thank you so much. I mean, this is really a work of art, really magnificent, capturing everything, like the whole essence of everything. This is so beautiful. It's really amazing. I can't thank you enough. Brilliant. Welcome, yes. Rob. What do you say
evening.
to this?
Yeah, that was a wonderful intro. I loved that. It sort of captured everything you were saying with some great images and video segments at the back there with some nice music. So, and just long enough for people to sort of join the show and so forth as well. So, yeah, excellent. Love it.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you, man. Okay, welcome to the Jinn and Tonic show. And like I said in the intro, we have several segments. The first one that we are going to look at is the news section. So we go to news, then we go to Krazy Komments, then we enter the Koran Zone, then we go for the theme, and then we're closing Hadith. And today I'm hoping to do something a little bit different. So let's take a look. So the avatar that you see there is me. I sent them my photo, and then they use the so-called GAN technology, which is, and I looked it up, generative adversarial networks. Which is some technology that they use where they take some key points in your face and then they modify this so that it looks like a Pixar character. So this is, I think it's fascinating. So somewhere in there you have the algorithm to reconstruct me. All you need to do is get the algorithm. So this is quite amazing. All right, I've only got one item. So the only item that I have today is in France, once again, because they seem to be really pushing this issue. So in France you have some radical Islamists, and what they're doing is the cabinet now is backing this law targeting extremism. Now, what people don't understand, this is not only directed as Islamism, it's also directed at all levels of terrorism, at extremism, anything that is violent and against the country. And this is why the Prime Minister, Jean Castex, called it a law of protection that would actually free Muslims from the grip of radicals. And this is what a lot of people don't understand. And he insisted that the text was not aimed against religions or against the Muslim religion in particular or something. But he says the bill supporting the Republic, the principles of the French Republic, would tighten restrictions on online hate speech, ban of use of internet to maliciously reveal personal details about other people. And that is what they're trying to do. That is what they're trying to do in France. Okay, now, is there anything else?
A couple of other items just of interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a new bill introduced to designate the Brotherhood, the Muslim Brotherhood, as a terrorist organization. And this looks to be in the US. A bill to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization was reintroduced by Senator Ted Cruz. And the act calls on the US State Department to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a foreign terrorist organization. So that's happening in the US. And then there's another one here with CAIR, CAIR, which is an Islamic organization in the US. Offers space, as in provides the opportunity for office space to Islamic group kicked out of France. So the Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR, CAIR, announced on its website it had offered office space in its Capitol Hill headquarters to the French NGO Collective Against Islamophobia in France, stating that the French Interior Minister had falsely accused the organization of spreading Islamic propaganda. So this is, mouthpiece for the Muslim Brotherhood and so forth. This organization is always at the forefront of crying about anything when Muslims are critiqued, or at least some Muslims are critiqued. So it's sort of, that's how they sort of keep going. They're presumably funded by the Muslim Brotherhood as well. So there's those couple of articles there.
Yeah, it is amazing. And by the way, this CAIR is classified as a terrorist organization by the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, for some reason.
Ah, interesting.
Quite telling, yeah. Yes, guys, you missed the intro. Fucking hell, it's good. Oh, sorry, it's excellent.
Yes, and good evening to all the viewers, right? Thanks for joining us and on this, well, for us here, Friday evening, especially me in the UK, and Stops wherever he is on Earth, although he might not be on Earth, so we have to wonder. He could be talking to us from a satellite or on the moon or elsewhere, you never know, right? Or might be from another dimension, one never knows, wherever he may be. But in my area, it's evening to you, and so if it's morning or afternoon, that to you as well. Thanks for joining us.
And I'm so used to, giving the intro that I automatically want to say, well, what you can do is blah, blah. No, we've already done it. We've covered it. Everything is okay. I can jump straight into Krazy Komments. Now, the first one is a little bit different. I don't know if this is going to work. See what you can hear here. This is quite strange. Krazy Comment.
No, we can't hear anything there. I can't.
No, you're joking. I tested it. I went and created a stream to record it, and the volume came out. That's why I did it like this, and I went and tested it, and yes, the volume came through.
Not hearing it at the moment. Is that coming through? It's not coming through as a tab on
no,
Chrome,
I'm using Minicam, and I tested exactly this. I just opened up a stream and I did exactly this, and I looked at the recording that came out on YouTube, and it had the sound on it.
No sound now. Do you want to not open it in Chrome maybe and then do it that way? What is it, Command R or Control R or O or whatever it is, and just run it through there?
Oh, yes.
And then add it as a tab.
Ready for this now.
You can always come back to it or something.
Let me quickly do this. But this is terrible. I don't know why.
It's almost like we need a production manager, don't we? That can run this. And then
it's funny that I did this like 2 seconds ago, and it worked. And tonight, I did it tonight. I worked it. Did it tonight.
Not everybody.
Okay, then let me go and
so.
share screen and do it the standard way with a tab.
While Stops is doing that, we're going to continue on after we've done. You got it? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, let's listen to this quickly. It's just 30 seconds.
You said,
Are you guys going to
Yeah, yeah.
continue to overtalk me?
let me just say what I'm going to say, and then you can say what you're going to say, right? You said you don't see any reason for it to be impossible. Yeah? So
That's right.
now the question is, do you see it as possible or necessary? Yes or no, please? Do you see it as possible or necessary? Yes or no, please?
Oh dear.
I think this is so funny. When he says, I don't see a reason that it should be possible, are you saying it's impossible? I'm not saying it's impossible, but are you saying, okay, is it possible or is it necessary? Is it yes or no?
He's such a confused individual, isn't it? And yet in his own mind, he thinks he's saying something coherent or substantial, right? It's one of those utterly deluded people that even if you broke it down and you taught them like you would to a child, there'd still be, there'd still be resistance to it. But he's not the only one, right? So he's in good company.
But it is amazing that so many people look up to him and so many people think that he's, like pure gold. Okay, and of course now we have the vaccine. So the vaccine, I don't know, this is, I thought we have spelling, like sort of error checks or spelling checks or something built in everywhere, but no, not here. So when the vaccine is implanted in you, which can alter your DNA, I think that is the Dajjal sign on the forehead.
Oh dear. This is 7th century ideas colliding with the 21st century, and this sort of comment is the result, right? It's like trying to merge a human with, I don't know, like a snail or something, right?
This is amazing. Okay, this is from Facebook. Now, somebody, this Ajiyed Guman, told people, why are you guys talking to him? Because this is like Benny, okay? He's afraid that if we go and indoctrinate someone that they might leave Islam. So he says, why speaking with him? So I said, well, because they are more honest than you, maybe. Because they are not such cowards like you, And all he has is go to hell. That's the only answer he has. That's all he can come up with.
A substantial and well thought out response.
Oh my God. Oh, and by the way, a lethophobe is somebody who hates truth or can't, or has a, unsubstantiated fear of truth. And I am against that, just in case people are wondering. So a lethophobe is from Greek knowledge. Okay, that was my lot. What we're up against next is we're going to go into Krazy Komments we've just done. Now we're entering the Koran Zone. There you go. I got sidetracked there for a second. So this is the Koran Zone. Now what I do here is I go and I take the Quran, and from the Quran I take just any sentence that is in chapter 8. We're now up to sentence number 52. And I go and I just sort of condense it. So what I do is I just look at what I think it says without going through lines and lines and lines of text. So if you want to go and read along, you can go to the Quran, which is chapter 8, the spoils of war, and then go to sentence number 52. Now, remember we had in 49, non-believers are hypocrites, non-believers go to hell because of what they did. And then 52 says, like Pharaoh's people. Now, this is not what the Quran says, okay? It doesn't say like Pharaoh's people. It gives you a whole long story, like the people of there, and da-da-da-da-da-da. But in essence, this is the contents of what the Quran is saying. And then 53, Allah is stubborn. Well, that's what I think it says there. And again, like Pharaoh's people, we destroyed and drowned them. Oh, okay, so Rob is now bringing, like Pharaoh's people. This is, so you see 3 lines of text, and I have condensed this into like Pharaoh's people. Because if you go into Yusuf Ali, he says, after the manner of the people of Pharaoh and of those before them, they rejected the signs and Allah punished them, for Allah is strong and strict. So I said, well, it's like Pharaoh's people. And the same thing I did with 53, Allah is stubborn. 54, like Pharaoh's people, we destroyed and drowned them. 55, and this is now one of the central stories, one of the central components of Islam. The worst living creatures are non-believers. So just remember 855. That is one of the worst sentences in the Quran. The worst living creatures are non-believers. This is what I consider, if ever there was an example of hate speech, this is this.
But stops, you're misreading it. It doesn't really say that. That's a typical response you get. Oh, this guy claims that it's the Banu Qurayza. This guy also claims that. This guy's not sure.
No. It was revealed to them.
Yeah.
And did you see the first line there? Just go to the first line. Those who violate the treaties were the Jews. So they're also not quite so sure who they're talking about.
Yeah.
But the way that I read it is, it says there, the worst living creatures are non-believers. So, and it's not quite clear actually whether they're talking about us who don't have any beliefs regarding gods or goddesses, or whether they're talking about the pagans. It's unclear. But anyway, so the non-believers are the worst living creatures according to this God, and this is what Muslims are being taught. So if you believe that there's something worth believing in the Quran, you need to believe this. You need to believe that the worst living creatures are non-believers. And then it says they broke a contract with you. Well, whom with whom? Who's you? Is you now Muhammad? Is you God? Who's you? They broke a contract with you. Who the hell are they talking about here? And it says, okay, those who, and then you made a covenant with them. So who is you? With them, who is them and who is you?
So this must be the Banu Qurayza, right? That's what the people will claim here.
Well, the way it is supposed to be is that this is a covenant between either the Jews or the Banu Qurayza with God. But it doesn't say that in the Quran.
Yeah, it's not clear that that's the case.
Those of them with whom you have made a pact. So Jalalains are saying, we don't know what he's talking about. So those of them, who is them, who is you, well, it doesn't say. He just repeats what it says in the Quran.
But the other interesting thing stops is here, like you say, it's not clear who this is. They're inferring this is the case. Again, this, if they want to use inference where something isn't clear, if we go back to the actual verse there, then they've got to hold to that standard. Because when the Quran doesn't say something clear and it's a clear inference that anybody can draw, then they've got to stay by that standard. What I notice is when it suits them, they want to have inference and say, hang on a moment, but this is what it infers, and they'll appeal to the tafsirs or whatever. But when you read some other verses, for example, let's say it's the worst of all creatures or whatever it is, they then want to infer that that's only refers to the Bani Qurayza because they broke the treaty and therefore they're the worst of creatures, but it doesn't apply to anybody else. So that's the inference they're drawing there. And then when we bring up a verse that is unpleasant or disagreeable to them, then suddenly the inference isn't allowed, or it's the wrong inference, or whatever the case may be. So you just got to be consistent here. If you're going to make inferences, which basically you have to, if you can't do that, you wouldn't understand anything here, then you've got to be consistent and use inference, or allow the critics to do so as well. And then it comes down to whose interpretation, which of course, in my view, is like such an own goal by the Quran itself, that you have to do that it's not clear and concise, which contradicts 1:3, 138 and other verses that say the similar thing. So, that's the problem with all of this.
That's what we came across last time, or 2 weeks ago, with the alcohol. Where it's totally unclear what they're talking about, and you can put anything in there. So,
what's an intoxicant, right? if an intoxicant, if there's 0.1% of alcohol in there, is that an intoxicant? When does it become an intoxicant?
Well, it can be anything. Because, come on, for me, music changes my mood. So, for me, music...
Apologies.
Music can cover my mind, can cover my brain, can cover my whatever functions. I can get emotional or soft or hard or agitated or whatever. So it depends on what kind of a mood I'm in, whether I want to be mellow or rocking or whatever. So there's a lot of things that music can do. The same thing goes for meditation. So, if you want to go and say, well, actually he's talking about prayer, you can interpret it that way. So, yeah.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's interpretation and it's inference that's drawn there. And like we say, what constitutes an intoxicant, right? And where's that clear? I said it today, right? I happened to be driving up to London, so I was chatting elsewhere on a stream. And somebody asked me what would it take for me to believe Islam is true? And I said, well, a worldwide revelation to all humans on the planet that all of our technology could verify as well. So then I know that it's not just me that's seeing or hearing this, or some sort of indestructible obelisk. Maybe its original writing is in Arabic, in the middle of Mecca rather than some black stone. And if I touched it, obviously it then translated immediately to my language, and I could get a clear understanding of anything that I wanted on there. Or I could drop the stand and make it a lot easier than that. How about an entire library the size of the Alexander Library that was just on every single moral precept that humans could possibly encounter at any time throughout their history, with good reasons as to what the outcome should be. And I said that would be quite persuasive to me, or that would certainly move me along the route. And so those are the sort of things that I would go, okay, now I've got to stop and think. This is something unique, this is amazing, whatever the case is. So there's certain things that will certainly get me, moving in that direction.
Yes, you missed. I missed it by half a millisecond because I was just clicking on him. Okay, then let's go. And
Good evening, Mustafa.
Hello, everybody. My apologies for being late. I was just finishing up some schoolwork, and I really wanted to finish the video, so here I am.
You missed the new intro.
Oh man!
Yes, like Pio took weeks and months of his time to go and prepare this, and you are late and you missed this intro. My goodness!
You'll have to go back and watch just the intro. Just go back and watch the intro after the show.
All right.
Brilliant. I think it's amazing.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely do that. Yeah.
Okay, we're in the Koran Zone, so on chapter 857, and this is another one of these sentences. If you fight and win, disperse them. Now, it doesn't say anything about defending. It doesn't say anything about anything, but it says disperse by them those who are behind them. Somebody says disperse by means of them, those behind them, and another one says disperse with them, those who follow them. Can anybody tell me what this means?
Like in the Yusuf Ali when it says, if ye gain the mastery over them in war, disperse with them those who follow them, that they may remember. So I think the only rationalization I can come up with is make sure you destroy them completely. That's the only thing I can come up with.
Yeah, but explain with them those who follow them.
Those who
others who do the same. In other words, people that might potentially, what we could infer there maybe is that it's other people. So they see this, right? And let's say the Arabs are fighting somebody else. And then other people see that fight and say, okay, we're also going to fight the others. So anybody else that might follow the enemies of
Allah. Yeah.
Okay, so what you're doing is you're now interpreting the interpretation.
Correct.
If you go to Sahih International, disperse by means of them those behind them.
Yeah.
And the original is really great. Disperse by them who behind them.
And it's extremely vague too. Like, what are you talking about?
Come on. And please, how can a Muslim believe this is clear and explained and easily to understand?
Oh no, it's not even close.
easily understood. I wanted
But
to
once
say.
you read the tafsir or something, and they sort of prime your brain to say, okay, they're talking about the Bani Qurayza, then it seems to fall into place. But you've got to know that, and nowhere in the Quran does it say that anyway. So it's now other human beings that are looking at historical information to try and make it fit with the vague verses here. Once that fits, then they can go, but hang on a moment, this all fits. Now you can see that they're talking about the Bani Qurayza and anybody else that might have followed in them, i.e. other people that might want to do the same thing that they did. Beware, right? Because the same sort of thing will happen to you. But it's such vagary. There's no, this can't be guaranteed to be what they're talking about here. And so again, you've got to draw an inference, and then you've got to interpret it in that way as well to meet it. And, this is just, again, we've just got to ask the question, is this what we would expect from an all-knowing God who wants to send a clear message? If he wanted to send a completely vague and ambiguous message, then the Quran is spot on. But if he wants to actually send a clear and concise message, then the Quran is way off. So that's the question we always have to ask Muslims. Is this the best your God can do? Is this in fact a clear message? If you gave that verse to anybody, they would say, hang on, I've got to go read other verses. I've got to go see what the scholars say, because they can't make it out themselves. Nobody who hasn't read this before, who claims to be a Muslim, and 99% of Muslims who have probably read this, wouldn't know what this refers to.
And not only
That's a very
that,
good approach, actually, what you're pointing out now, because the idea that you need to go read a sentence, and then in order to understand the sentence, you need to go and you need to first find a context. You need to go and read other sentences to understand this sentence, tells you already that the expectation is different. So if I expect a sentence from a God, I would expect one that does not require context, that is eloquent and beautifully done, without any grammatical errors, without any factual errors. But if I go and expect human beings to write this, then this is exactly what I would expect. Full of inconsistencies, contradictions, and mistakes, things that they didn't understand, and full of things where people without a version control simply brought out stories which sort of made sense in their environment, but not to anybody 100 or even 1,000 years later. So these are the two expectations that you have.
yeah, and not only that, like even if they say it's related to the Banu Qurayza, for example, like you stated, it's 100+ years later that the story was written. So 100 years before that, this thing was being authored. It's not understandable at all.
And that's why the tafsir, because Rob just said we have to read the tafsir to be able to make head or tails of this. They contradict one another. They're saying it's the Banu Qurayza. Then they say, oh, no, actually it's the Egyptians. No, it's actually the Jews. So it's inconsistent. It is inconsistent even when it is being interpreted. This is the funny thing. So,
And again, we would expect, right, that if this was a book of some historical note, it would be clear who's speaking to who here as well. Right, if you read other historical books from manuscripts and so forth, there's some indication of who is speaking and who's interacting with who. Right, and that can be quite easily ascertained. But here, that's not so easy.
correct. Okay, 58. If you fear betrayal, throwback. I don't know. I don't understand this. You can, of course, go and look at the words, and then at some point you can make sense of it if you read interpretations and other versions and other things. But if somebody throws this sentence at you, you go and you say, excuse me? Yeah, then look, and if you fear from a people betrayal, throw back to them on equal terms. Indeed, Allah does not love the traitors. But the word terms isn't even there. So if you fear from a people betrayal, throw back to them on equal.
And keep in mind, it's not the act hasn't happened yet. It's just the fear of betrayal, if anything. Can you hear me?
Yep,
Yeah.
we can hear you.
Cool.
Yeah.
No, you're making perfect sense. This is, yeah. Non-believers can't escape. Why? Why would... I don't know, this doesn't make sense. I don't know, this chapter 8 is killing me, really. Non-believers can't escape. Why would I want to escape? What is wrong with you? Why would you write this?
And now it's not clear if it means escape the Muslims of the time or escape Allah's judgment or what, right? Again, that's not clear.
And stay there, go to the next one. Go to the next one. No, stay there because the next one is terrify them. You will be repaid and not blamed. Can you believe it? Oh, this is a long one. Okay, yeah.
Oh,
With
wow.
me, this is just 6 words.
Against them make ready your strength to the utmost of your power, including steeds of war, to strike terror into the hearts, strike terror into the enemies of Allah and your enemies and others besides, whom you may not know, but whom Allah doth know. Whatever ye shall spend in the cause of Allah shall be repaid unto you, and ye shall not have been treated unjustly. So it's kind of just like,
heavy.
yeah, that's just kind of a thing of, it's like a battle type scenario, right? Go unto battle, and your God will be with you, that type of thing.
Yeah. And now the next one, you can stay there. If they give up,
okay.
stop.
One sec. Let me just bring it back.
And then you can stay there because the next one is equally amazing.
Okay. But if the enemy incline towards peace, do thou also incline towards peace, and trust in Allah, for He is the one that heareth and knoweth all things.
And
Heareth and knoweth.
62, if not, Allah will come to the rescue.
Should they intend to deceive thee, but if they intend to deceive thee, then sufficient for you is Allah. It is He who supported you with His help and with the believers.
That just itself contradicted just a few statements earlier. I thought we were supposed to like annihilate them completely. Now what happened?
Well, I think it's saying here that, if they, put out the hand of peace, then you be peaceful as well. And if they're going to deceive you, well, don't worry, Allah's got your back.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
exactly. And now put 63 on it. Tell me what it says. I have no clue.
And He has put affection between their hearts. If you had spent whatever in the earth all not, could you have put affection between their hearts? But Allah has put affection between them. Indeed, He is Almighty, All-Wise.
Now, what the fuck does that say?
That's exactly my reaction. What the fuck am I just reading? And the other one, and it brought together their hearts. If you had spent all that is in the earth, you could have not brought their hearts. Okay, I think it means that, if you had given all your energy and they wouldn't become your allies, but Allah can do it. That's what I'm making out of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also it's like if you'd spent all that's on earth, you could not have brought their hearts together, i.e., either brought them back to Allah or brought them to be, friends or allies with you or whatever the case is. So their hearts are away. They're going the wrong path, and that sort of thing. But Allah could bring them together, but clearly He didn't want to. He's the exalted one and all the rest of it. So it doesn't matter what you did. You couldn't have done anything to save them or bring them together, but Allah could have done this. But clearly He didn't want to do that, so you went to war with them.
And this is the time now to ask the Rob Speakers question. Is this the best your God can do?
Yeah. Is He a merciful God? If He's all merciful, then clearly He would want them to have learnt a lesson and to be spared and bring their hearts together. Even if humans couldn't do it, He could do it. And yet
He chooses
it
not.
seems to me He didn't do that. And now the question is, why not? And presumably a Muslim might say something like, well, to show everybody. But you can do that without actually having to go through the deed, right? The message could have been done and Allah could have saved them. And it was interesting. I don't know if you've seen the movie, what's the one with Liam Neeson where he saves like the Jews from the Holocaust, the black and white movie? Schindler's List. Yeah. I don't know if you remember, there's a scene in there. There's a scene in there where the German guy, what's his name? Ralph Fiennes, I think, is it? The actor, anyway. He's like shooting, every now and again he's shooting a random one in the concentration camp. And I think it's Schindler or it's somebody else. I can't remember if Schindler or somebody else comes up to him and he says, you know what the real power is, it's easy to kill somebody, but the real power is to for them to know that you can kill them, but to let them go free, i.e. to forgive them or whatever the case is, right? Because the pulling of the trigger, once you get used to doing it, it's not that's not the correct words, but my interpretation thereof. So real power is in fact showing mercy, right? That's kind of what, I don't know whether it was Schindler or it was somebody else that was saying this to this colonel that was, just killing the Jews. They were all standing there and he's just shooting random ones in the head and they're all so terrified, just hoping it's not going to be them. And then this person says that to him, right? And that's, of course, what I guess we could say is mercy. And I think that was a poignant thing, pointing out to this guy that, in fact, the fear of dying isn't where the real power lies, but the fear, the power, if he wants power, is that, him allowing them to live, because the power's in his hands and the pulling of the trigger is easy. But the not pulling of the trigger is where the real power is. That's what they were trying to get across to this German general. And I think that would be the same sort of thing one could say here, right? If you got the power, then why aren't you using it? That's where the real power is, isn't, and the mercy.
And the strength, yeah. Now, the way that I condense this, as I said, you put affection between their hearts, and no matter what you would try, you could not put affection between their hearts. But Allah has put affection between their hearts. So I'm showing how ridiculously silly the wording is, but still sort of getting the gist of the whole message that people can understand it. That's why I did it like this.
Yeah, and I think the affection part was the sort of off-putting part there, right? When it's reinterpreted with the Sahih, then it kind of makes a little bit more sense. But again, that's a different interpretation, right?
Yeah. Then we come to 64, O Prophet, and I put there, this is actually using the word Nabi, which normally does, you have Rasul and Nabi. Okay, Rasul is the messenger and the Prophet is the Nabi. And somebody like Muhammad is both. The others are not. They're either messengers or prophets, and Muhammad is both. So, O Prophet, what is sufficient is Allah and whoever follows you. That's silly. So first you say Allah is sufficient, and then you're saying, no, but the people who follow you are equally good. So this is elevating Muhammad, as the son, as Jesus, the Son of God, into the position of a part of a Godhead. This is, for me, this is quite clear.
So it says here, O Prophet, sufficient for you is Allah and whoever follows you of the believers.
So this, for me, if this would be in the New Testament, and this would be, for Jesus. So Jesus, sufficient for you is your God, and whoever follows you of the believers. That would make Jesus part of the Godhead. And for me, I'm seeing the same thing here. Because Allah and Muhammad are on the same level here.
Interesting, yeah. So could there be a possible, maybe inspiration from the Jesus character, and then they just gave it to Muhammad?
This is my hypothesis here. This is my model, what I'm seeing here.
Yeah.
If I substitute this, it would make sense. So for me, this shows that here in this case, the earth-bound part of this God figure is to be followed by the believers the same way as Allah.
Right, yes.
So I mean, because I'm reading a couple of verses there to see if I can get a little bit more clarity, because, sometimes reading more than one translation does help. And to me, it's kind of saying, well, Allah is sufficient for you, i.e. Allah is the answer for you, but Allah is also the answer for whoever follows you that believes in Him, essentially. So
Correct.
Basically, it's
that.
Yeah, you're just sort of elevating Allah to say that He's what you need, and anybody that follows you, He's also what they need. And that's the way that's kind of framed there. Yeah.
So for me, this is ambiguous, but it could also be them, and this is why I thought this was wow.
And is the prophet? Okay. I have just a quick little thing here. It doesn't specifically say it's Muhammad by name either.
No,
this could be anybody. Yeah.
I mean, Muhammad doesn't really feature in the Quran, okay?
Exactly.
Because even when it says Muhammad, it is an interpretation. It's actually the praiseworthy one. You don't know who the praiseworthy one is. It could be anyone. And this is the weird part.
Oh, definitely.
Muhammad is not part of the Quran at all. And if we look at history, Muhammad doesn't feature until much, much, much later. And even then, it is just like a placeholder. and this is why a lot of people, I mean, this is not only me, I mean, this is not my idea. I had to be, directed into this, that there are so many similarities between Jesus and Muhammad. And if you look at the numismatic evolution, as it were, Muhammad in the beginning is still shown with a cross in the early coins, because the first coins that appear are like in 680. And there it's still with the cross. And it's only Malik, 30 years later, who then creates Quran, Islam and everything and makes it into an Arab thing, where before it was sort of a hybrid. And it's only then that you get the clear-cut, the differences, that suddenly you pray towards Mecca, that suddenly and all these other things. So, yeah. Okay, then we get to sentence 65. O Prophet, again, using Nabi, okay? Urge them to fight. And 20, and this is so weird. Oh my God, this is embarrassingly bad. 20 will overcome 200. 100 will overcome 1,000. Wow, isn't that amazing? I mean, 20 to 200 and 100 to 1,000. Brilliant. Here the arithmetic actually works. But now, in 66, he's contradicting everything. Because he says you are weak. Now, I created you, okay? So, but I created you weak, so that the 20 that will overcome the 200 can't really do that. So 100 will only overcome 200. And 1,000 will overcome 2,000 because of Allah. Excuse me? This is a declaration of bankruptcy. This is a declaration, well, I can't really do a job well. I'm not good enough, I'm not competent enough to create human beings, where I tell them that 20 will overcome 200, but actually I'm a failure, so you can only do 200 if you're 100, not 20. So this is like...
Okay, so I'm just looking at 65 and 66. So at 65, it's kind of like a possibility, right? That's what it comes across to me as. O Prophet, i.e., Allah speaking to presumably Muhammad, urge the believers to battle. If there among you 20 who are steadfast, right? They will overcome 200. But then, as you say in the next verse, it basically says, he knows that among you there is weakness. So if you were steadfast, 20 could overcome 200. But because you have weakness, he's still kind of there with you, but now only 100 who are steadfast will overcome 200.
200, exactly.
So it's because you're weak that instead of you being able to overcome 5 times as many, you can only overcome, or 10 times as many, you can only overcome twice as many, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
and he's still there with you. Of course, nobody would have to do anything, right? They could all stand there and everybody could be smited without them, laying a battle axe on anybody. But for some reason, they've got to go into battle, right?
And they also, even in the following verse, where it's like 100 to 200, they will overcome 2,000 by permission of Allah, and Allah is with the steadfast. So it's only by the permission of Allah that you can do even the...
Yeah, I think that's kind of taken as a given in every case, right? If he's going to help them, then it's always by his permission. But it's now because they're weak, right? So in a perfect world, or in a really wonderful world, the steadfast would be able to overcome 10 times their amount, but because they're weak, they can only overcome 2 times their amount, but still with the permission of Allah, right? Although, like I say, all you would have to say is they could stand there and he could smite all your enemies in front of you with a big vortex of some sort, or lightning from the sky, and that would truly be impressive. Suddenly they just get routed by like a miracle event that is virtually impossible to happen through naturalistic processes. That would have been impressive if you were on the battlefield, but of course none of that happens, it seems like.
Yeah, but it says here Allah is with the steadfast. Yeah, but then Allah is a weak Allah, because if He is with the steadfast, then they should be able, just the 20 should be able to do the 200, but they can't. So Allah is with the steadfast, but Allah with the steadfast is not doing anything. So
I think it's like degrees of steadfastness, maybe. Like if you're really, really steadfast, you could overcome 10 times your number, but because you're not quite so steadfast, there's weakness, so you're less steadfast, but he's still with you, you're not going to overcome as many.
Yeah.
But this, of course, I think stops as well.
God.
But I think this is also just like a rallying cry, right? As in to try and give them some courage to go into battle, not like this is actually happening. So it's like, the pep talk before the battle, but as they see the enemy coming or that sort of thing, and sort of fear grips them, well then, the pep talk becomes a little bit more realistic because the previous one sort of G'd them up, and now suddenly reality's kicking in. And so it's still trying to do the same thing, but reducing the mythicalness of it to something that maybe potentially is more realistic. Although, like you say, if Allah was doing that, that wouldn't be necessary. So it seems like to me, it's almost like it's a man-made thing that now the metal hits the rubber hits the road, and actually, hey guys, I did say 10 times as many, but maybe I'm
exactly.
I'm a bit that's a bit too much. So, but you can overcome double the amount if he's with you. And then they go, oh shit, okay, well, maybe I'm still going to do it, type of thing.
Yeah, and that's probably what's the case because, how you pointed out, that's actually a very good analogy. That's probably what it means, because it's like from 20 to 100 to like, a bit more realistic. So yeah, that was a very good. I did not catch that. That I actually admire that. Yeah, thank you.
Now, we have a person in the chat who delivered this amazingly good intro, but I hate him because he put me onto the serial, The Boys. I don't know if anybody's seen parts of it. There you have got people with superpower because they have developed something over through evolution and blah, blah, blah. Anyway.
It's a serum, right? It's a serum that's... given young
the
children superpowers.
The serum sort of strengthens it. It amplifies it.
Yeah.
But you need the DNA, the mutation. This is why they are mutants. Anyway, so this is the perfect example. The one guy gets cross. I mean, it's in the form of a vision, but he gets cross, and he just looks at the people, and suddenly you have 2,000 people dead. Now, this is the kind of thing that I have in front of me when he says, okay, look, you need to fight. Okay, so urge them to fight. Then if Allah is with you, then with the steadfast, so there should be a steadfast person who is then going to go and be able to kill 2,000 people just by looking at them and laser eyes or something like that. So this is quite funny. Anyway, so this is the kind of picture that I see in front of me. And here I see that, no, this is a weak Allah because he is sort of reasoning with the people. Well, I'm not going to make 20 do 200, but if you have 100, then surely you can do double, which I think is not really a commitment to strength and to confidence in his own abilities, I think. It's somehow not. Oh boy. Captives, see, it's sentence 67, captives may only be taken if the rest was massacred. Can you believe it? So you can't just tell the people, listen guys, let's stop fighting. You go and you sort of resign and go home or something. No, you need to actually massacre them until only a few are left, and those you can take captive. And then you're allowed to rape them, as we can see in the authentic hadith. You want the rewards, but Allah wants the afterlife for you. So the more you massacre, the more of an afterlife you get. This is crazy. This is sick.
And then it also could be like the captives, in sort of like the captives being, your sex slaves or your slaves, could be sort of like this world's reward. It feels like it was this world's compensation for the fighters, because you have
exactly
leader having this harem of all these women, and they're getting nothing, so that is their motivation to fight, because you can't just forever dangle the grapes or the houris forever. Like, they need something in this world too.
But there seems to be this message here of proportion. So you will get captives proportion to how many people you actually massacre. So if you don't massacre enough people, you don't get so many captives. So you need to really kill people before this is seen as a real feat by Allah, and then you get captives. So then you get the rewards. Because Allah can then see, because you are zealot or zealous, then Allah can see that you are worthy of the afterlife with Him.
Yeah, I think you're quite right. It's like it's a reward. First, it's the pep talk, then there's the talk of reward, and possibly also the talk of hellfire or damnation if you don't do it. So you're stacking the odds in your favor in this sort of pep talk before the battle or during the battle, to keep your believers following along. Otherwise, they can scatter away. But if He desires the afterlife, I mean, He could just send you there immediately, right? If that's the case, like He desires for you, or He looketh to the hereafter, why not just send them straight away? If that's His goal, and if that's what He's looking for, why go through all of this? And then, of course, the Muslim would likely say there's a test. But hang on a moment. What's the test necessary? If He wants you in the hereafter, just go straight to the hereafter. If the test is actually to see whether you get to the hereafter, then clearly He only desires the hereafter for certain people. And even those people, if they don't follow the correct path, they won't get to the hereafter. So He doesn't really desire the hereafter for even all of His own chosen people in any case. So it's that even that statement is, that sort of a statement, even that is not entirely true as well. Otherwise, every single believer would go there as long as they believe firmly in Allah, right? But as you know, stops as well. People aren't even guaranteed to get there, even though He desires it. So that seems to be problematic.
And I said I'm not going to explain everything all the time, but I need to point out that the first thing that was ever created is the pen, which wrote down everything. So in other words, people already know whether they're going for the hereafter. So this whole testing is stupid. So it doesn't make sense. Okay, the next sentence is brilliant. Thank God allowed this. Can you explain that one?
Had it not been for previous ordainment from Allah, severe penalty would have reached you for the ransom that you took. If not for a decree from Allah that preceded, you would have been touched. You would have been touched for what you took by a great punishment. Or what was it that they took? Presumably it was what, booty or reward or something?
Yes. Hang on. You would have been touched for, I don't know what, I mean, I read a lot before I write this, so I can't even remember what I read here.
Yeah, so he's talking about the spoils of war. Yes, on the day of Badr, when they had the spoils
Since most
of
of the
war.
heads are black. There's no racism in Islam, is there?
Yeah, I see a hadith narrated by Abu Huraira page which says none of the black heads, meaning the children of Adam, since most of their heads are black. I don't know why I read that. Before you partook of the spoils of war, put fire between from the heavens that would be sent down, consuming them. Suleiman said, no one says this except Abu Huraira. Oh God, this is horribly translated. So on the day of Badr, when they had spoils of war, before it was made lawful for them, Allah Most High revealed, for it was not ordained by Allah.
Exactly. This is where the idea came from that made me say, thank God allowed this. This is exactly this. So Allah ordained this, and you need to be grateful that He did, otherwise you wouldn't be able to take what you took.
Yeah, or hold on to it or whatever, yeah.
And then 69 says, enjoy your booty. Well, okay, now God allowed this, so you killed enough people, so now you can enjoy your booty. And 70 tell them if they behave, they will be rewarded. And if not, punish them.
O Prophet, say to whoever is in your hands, but if they intend to betray you, certainly they betrayed Allah from before, so He gave power over them, and Allah is all-knower, all-wise.
Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, so basically Allah gets the praise, but He continues with the threats.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
He does sound like a narcissist. Not gonna lie.
Not only here, let me tell you. What I want to do quickly is share this with you because I find this quite interesting. Now, I found a page which has all these channels on it. So this is like a repository of all the the current sort of Dawah channels that you get, all the apologist channels. So I call this the collection of Dawah channels, and this is the link if you want to see this. And you have all these guys. I mean, Sabil Ahmed, I've never heard of him. So there are people, and this One Path Network, this is brilliant because they have all these short ones that you can always go. Because of course we have our Adnans and the hijabs, and somewhere you have this, what's this called? The
Yevda was there. All Truth
Yevda
Revealed is our
here.
friend
Shabia.
the Shabir Shuffle.
Then you have, where's the guy? Imran is here somewhere as well. Oh, we have Kenny Boma here. Wow, isn't that wonderful? So this is like
Quite a
for me,
collection you have there, huh?
quite a collection that I found, and this is only on one channel. This is only on here who references the other channels, and these are all the things that you find there. This is why I thought I would
Like all their favorite channels or something.
share. Yeah, exactly. I wanted to share this with you. So if you're ever at a loss finding Dawah channels, well, here
There's plenty of them, aren't there?
which is what I call, so we're spoiled for choice. So we have so many different, videos that we can go and check and look and critique, and so there's a lot.
Speaking of which, we have part 2 tonight. So here is part 2. So if you remember from last week, this is Nadir Ahmed, is the Quran a scientific miracle? And this was his quote-unquote debate, and I use that word very sparingly in inverted commas, with Kenny Boma being the moderator. And this is more just his sort of preaching, right? Not really taking any of the critique from Tom on board at all, and claiming that the Quran is a scientific miracle. So we finished at around 39 minutes 30, but we just got back a short while so you can sort of see the lead into where we stopped, just as a refresher.
I'm quickly going to go make some coffee for myself.
All right, so we'll go for this. The stops will join us when we come back. So
All right.
this part, just this first 30 seconds we would have heard from last week, but just as a refresher, so that when we get into when we get to 39:30, at least then we've got a little bit of background. So here we go. And again, Mustafa, you just shout out stop when you want me to stop. I'm running it at the moment.
All right, I'll do that.
He says, look, regarding that scientific revolution which the Quran triggered, he says, Muhammad didn't do that. Other people did. You see, I'm glad you have said that, because what he's showing you is, Muhammad, that was not his intention. Well, if that was not intention, but yet it happened, then this is yet another coincidence that we are seeing in the Quran. And remember, coincidence is something unexpected to happen. But if you see it happening over and over and over again, then this cannot be a coincidence. So the issue here tonight is not that, okay, the Quran is true because look at all the good consequences, and the Quran is true because it wrote alcohol is bad, therefore God. Those are your straw mans. Okay, that's not my argument. The issue here, you need to understand the concept of what a coincidence is. And these occurrences, which we're finding in the Quran, either it was intended or unintended. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, Tom, you have 2 minutes.
So again, I literally I read the quotes from the Bible proving that you're wrong. Apparently, I don't know. Maybe he doesn't know how to read. I don't know why he doesn't understand that. Like literally, the Bible says in multiple verses, alcohol is bad. He thinks that because Christians don't listen to the Bible, somehow the Bible doesn't say those things, even though I just read them. Like again, appeal to consequences fallacy. The fact that people do or do not act on what it says does not actually change what it actually says. Secondly, again, nothing he said there was actually an evidence of any kind. Saying that people were inspired by the Quran and did stuff. That's literally the same of every ideology. If you have something that you're passionate about, that's what inspires you. People get inspired by cars and they make progress and discoveries. People get inspired by everything. People who are autistic get obsessed with a random topic like lights or magnifying glasses, and that thing inspires them to make a discovery. Nothing about this is spectacular. This is literally just everyday stuff humans do all over the world. Again, I don't know why Nadir thinks any of this is evidence. I just don't think he knows enough history. It's again Donald Trump argument. Nobody did this ever before. Nobody knew this. In fact, that everyone knew throughout all history. That's essentially Nadir's argument. It's the Donald Trump argument. Nadir is the Donald Trump arguments guy. All right, I'm done.
Yeah, so the idea is here, or at least what he tries to infer, this is Nadir, and Tom is pointing it out, that people can get inspired by anything, right? There's one guy that read the Quran. He was reading some verse about the angels. Somebody put me onto him. He's an English guy. He's an American guy that maybe was a Christian, whatever. and became Muslim, and they sort of said, hey, go look at this guy, he's got something good. So I went to go listen to this, and he's giving a talk at a lectern and stuff like this, right, and telling people why he became Muslim, and he read a particular verse that touched him, quote unquote, right, like he had an emotional response to a particular verse. I listened to the verse, I read it, and it did absolutely nothing to me. I was like, okay, let's listen to this first. What is it that this guy did, right? Because I was interested. And I went there and I went, this is kind of mundane, right? There's nothing to this. But because his emotional and psychological state was such at that moment that he read something into this, and then he became Muslim, right? And I think what Tom is pointing out here is that people can get inspired by anything. So that's a mundane claim, because the idea here is that this can't be coincidence, because this is what inspired the outcome of what happened with the Quran, or whatever the case is. This must be something unique, but it's just it just happens to be the case. And where it's a bad thing, where the Quran says beat your wife, and many people, many Muslims beat their wives and so forth, presumably Nadir is not going to, well, maybe he will actually say, well, that's a great thing, you've got to keep your wives in check. Let's hope not, but you couldn't put it past him. So again, it's just an appeal, I think, as Tom says, to consequences, but there's nothing spectacular about the book. But Nadir's claim is that, hey, all these consequences, I think at this stage we've only had 3 or 4, right? So this is not, we haven't had 100 here in any case. So we've had 3 or 4 that he claims have these great consequences, and the only way this could have happened is if this was divinely inspired. And that's such a weak argument. A, we've got very few of them, and B, we can't establish that there was the intention for this outcome. But he's just saying that, hey, even if there wasn't an intention, the fact that this outcome happened is miraculous in and of itself. And of course, that's not the case, as Tom pointed out. Other things have had, amazing outcomes where people didn't know the answer to this.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that this is something I noticed with Nadir Ahmed specifically. There's a term called fire hosing. And what it is basically you say a lot of information at once in that given specific time. Compared to Nadir, TJump over here, he's not saying as much compared to Nadir. But to us, the atheist here is making sense. Whereas Nadir, to his gullible audience, will sound like he's done more research, he's done more. So it's kind of like fire hosing, like give, say as many words as possible, state as many quote unquote facts, but like not the other person will not have enough time to, answer each and every specific detail.
And another way these days that's also called the gish gallop, right? Where you fire out a lot of information, in quick succession. The other thing I think with Nadir is that he's not clear and concise. It's like he thinks that and this seems to be common among certain apologists anyway, if they repeat themselves over and over, somehow that makes the argument stronger. I just have to keep repeating. And we saw it the other night when Stops and I were doing a review of another video, right? We heard the guy repeating the claim when he doesn't have anything to say in terms of a substantial response. He goes back to like playing the record over again, and somehow either to him or to the gullible audience, somehow they think that this is substantial, and it's mind-boggling how that could be, how they can think that's the case.
Yeah. Let's just continue to play this.
Okay. All right, Nadir, you have 2 minutes. We're not hearing you, Nadir.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's probably a good thing, by the way. But hey, all good things come to an end very quickly, sadly.
I'm going to ignore his false information about the Bible condemns alcohol, because obviously the studies show that's not the case. Okay, but we're going to ignore that. So let's look at some more coincidences which are taking place in the Quran.
Wait, hang on.
Let's go to the issue.
Stop. So he's talking about studies, but then TJump just quoted the Bible. Why not go to that specific verse?
You mean the Bible verse?
The Bible verse, yeah. He doesn't want to talk about it. Look at that. He just avoided. He dodged a bullet right there.
Yeah, he just claims that it's false, and let's just move on, right? As you can see, he makes lots of claims and doesn't really back them up. And when he does, quote unquote, back them up, he just brings something up on screen that isn't particularly substantial anyway. So again, I think this is propagandist, right? This is not for people like us. It is definitely not to convince the critically minded. This is to hopefully reach the gullible audience and remind them that it's okay, and that the Quran has got all this fantastic information in it. But certainly, like many of the other apologists, is not to convince those who are thinking critically.
Oh yeah, definitely. Let's see what he has.
To chapter 95, verse 15 and 16 of the Quran. Here is a verse in the Quran which says, can you guys see my desktop by any chance?
No, brother.
Oh, let me share my desktop here real quick. Okay, so let's go right here.
There, you can leave it up and he can turn it on and off for us.
Oh, okay, sounds good. Okay, so chapter 9, the verse says, nay, if he ceases not, we will catch him by the forelock, a lying, sinful forelock. Now, the word in Arabic there is actually nasiya. And what this is actually a word which is talking about the frontal part of the head. Now, you can interpret this a couple of ways, but one of the valid interpretations, you can say maybe he's referring to the hair. That's one interpretation. But one of the valid interpretations also is talking about the front part of your head doing this action of lying and sinning. And this is, and what we know from science is that the frontal lobe, the anterior part of the brain of the lobe, is a place for cognitive functions and reasoning and judgment over here. And so if you look at this, one of the valid interpretations, there's two interpretations there, but one of the valid ones actually does agree with science.
Okay, this is like such an own goal. It's just like hard that he says this and doesn't realize what an own goal this is. If there is more than one valid interpretation, why is he cherry picking that one? What makes that one more valid than the other valid interpretation? And if there's more than one valid interpretation, that's a point against the Quran, not in its favor. There should only be one clear, concise, quote unquote, interpretation that is unambiguous. That's what you would expect. So firstly, it's showing that there isn't more one, which is an own goal. But secondly, he's cherry picking that particular one as if, so if you were a Muslim going, the question to ask, and I don't know if Tom will ask it, is why are you choosing that one? That's my first question. You've just claimed there were two or more than one, and you're saying that they're both valid. And if they say two different things, then they're contradicting each other. If one says the forelock and another says the fore part of the brain, those are two different things. How do you reconcile this? Yeah. And he would probably just respond with, oh, well, they're both valid. Now you're just saying something. Now you're being irrational. At this point, we can dismiss you as being somebody who is making an irrational statement. Do you know what a contradiction is, Nadir Ahmed? Blah, blah, blah. Probably not, right? Because he's just said it as if like that's a valid statement to make. It's remarkable.
And what's this verse he's quoting?
95... Was it 95, 15 or 16? I think it is. Have a look there if you can, Mustafa.
Wait, I'm trying to look at the, what do you call it?
Let's just go back a little bit there. I'll just see, where are we now? We're at 4302. If we just go back a little bit there.
There's only 8 verses here.
It is, what is it there? I'm looking. It's 96, 15, and 16. So Surah 96, Surah 96, Ayah 15 or 16.
15. Okay, let's go there. So it says here, the 15 says, nay, but if he sees not, we will seize him by the forelock. And then the next phrase says, the lying sinful forelock. But what does a forelock mean exactly?
Yeah, he gave a thing there. It says, he said it means something, right? But he said there was that there's more than one interpretation, and one valid one is X, and he's taking that particular one because it suits his narrative.
Right? Here's a definition: a lock of hair growing just above the forehead. So it's not even talking about the head; it's talking about the hair.
Yeah, but he's claiming that another interpretation. Where does any other tafsir or anything else say another thing? Another, like the forehead rather than the tuft of hair? Because I would agree that it's a tuft of hair, right?
It's always the hair, and this is the argumentation that it's because the hair is above the prefrontal cortex where the lies are being generated. This is why this is the premonition, or I don't know what he wants to call it, that because he was talking about a place on the body where underneath there is something. This is like between the backbone and the ribs.
Yeah, this is like a massive amount of inference drawing here. This is like, I've got a conclusion that I want to reach. Let me see how I can massage the Quran to reach this conclusion, right? It's exactly the opposite of critical thinking. It's like, I've got a conclusion that I need to meet, so I will now, quote unquote, provide this quote in inverted commas valid interpretation, even though there are other ones which are straightforward, but somehow I'm going to cherry pick this one because it suits my narrative.
And
Also,
Yeah.
what-
And
what
even the
he's-
forelock.
Yeah, but what he's basing it on is that he's saying in science we know that lies are being generated at this point in the brain, which is utter bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and not only that, the forelock itself, like if you even Google it, the first image it shows you is the horse's hair at the front of a horse.
Exactly.
Not a human, a horse.
Yeah.
How much more time do I have?
You have 30 seconds right now.
Okay, so again, this could also be another interpretation is just probably referring to the forelock of the hair. But remember, when you see this, multiple interpretations, we need to question if one of them agrees with science. And so this obviously does agree with science. And so if you don't accept this and Muhammad was intending to agree with science, then this means it is another unintended consequence, another, you could say, accident. So go ahead, TJ.
Okay, I think we've dealt with this, right? He's cherry picking an interpretation that I think is less valid from what we've read here, and then claiming that it agrees with science, and then making the claim that this must be a coincidence if Muhammad is doing this. You can hear that this is like if-then type of statements, but he hasn't even got the if part to be solid enough that we should accept that. So again, I'd be asking why he's taking this interpretation rather than the straightforward one. And why should anybody else believe this? There seems to be cherry picking to fit his narrative, and on this basis alone, I'm going to dismiss this.
That's what it should have.
Yeah,
This
and
diagram.
he doesn't state which interpretation too. If you notice that, like which one.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, that was right at 2 minutes. Okay, Tom, you have 2 minutes.
This person I found on Facebook must be just immensely knowledgeable about neurology. They said, I hate liars. I want to punch them in the face. And by Nadir's logic, what they are predicting the fact that the frontal lobe deals with lying. Oh my God, they're geniuses. How did they ever find this out? Or is it an ambiguity fallacy, just like every one of Nadir's examples so far? Like, I think he doesn't understand the difference between unintended consequence and ambiguity fallacy that you can interpret any way you want. This is pretty much the standard laissez-faire interpretation of make your favorite text fit whatever fact you can find that creationists use. It's not evidence at all. Like, I mean, his argument is literally the same, that this person on Facebook somehow predicted that the frontal cortex deals with lying because they said, I hate liars and I want to punch them in the face, which is the same as the quote he read from the Quran where they want to grab liars by the front of the head. Like, how is this even the thing? Like,
Okay, I think this is quite a weak response from Tom.
It
Right?
is. It really
Every
is.
single time he's responding, he's trying to come up with another. What else could this mean? And I think that the better, at least for me, the better approach is get Nadir. And this is why the 2 minute thing just doesn't work, right? Get Nadir to justify why he cherry picked that interpretation and where he thinks that interpretation came from. Because the other interpretation, as you pointed out, Mustafa, is the forelock of hair. So why is it that he's trying to jump? This is like what's the term when you're trying to pull something to, it's like stretching an elastic band to try and reach a meter. So it's a 10 centimeter elastic band that you're trying to stretch and say, look, this elastic band is actually a meter long, when in fact it's, that's what's happening here. And I think he should be challenging Nadir, not looking for other interpretations that it could mean to like as a counterpoint, because he doesn't really know Islam that well, so he's just appealing to generalist claims, and I just don't think that's in my personal opinion, I don't think that's the best way to deal with this.
Oh, absolutely.
again, this is like Donald Trump level argumentation here. I don't understand why Nadir even thinks this counts as evidence. Like, no one takes this seriously. No one would ever take this seriously. I don't get it. All right, I'm done.
Okay. All right, Nadir, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I really like his example. I want to punch him in the face, but that's kind of scientifically inaccurate. But let me fix it up for you. I want to punch him in the head. That guy's a liar. I want to punch him in the head. Now, that will work. And so this constitutes as a coincidence. Meaning, of course, when your real intention was you want to hurt him. He made you mad. But it was not your intention. That statement actually does agree with science, because you're acting as if this part, the front part of his head, is what's causing him to.
Okay, now he's just rambling, right? He's latched on to Tom's example, and now he's just rambling. Any sort of words that come out in any order here, as long as he fills up airtime, this is complete and utter rambling, completely vacuous. We're hearing now, right?
There's two things here. Number one, he's failed to provide a verification of any sorts, And number two, he doesn't even understand what TJump was trying to do and takes it literally as though it's about the punching. It's not about the punching. It's about that somebody says, I'm going to do this, and this is verified in the Quran. He's just making an analogy. It's not about the punching, and Nadir fails to even understand this.
But that's also why, Stops, I think that bringing up counter examples can be useful with the right opponent. This guy is not, right, because they'll latch onto that counter example and try to prove the counter example is actually in their favor, and that's what he's trying to do here. Is actually saying, but your counter example agrees with me, so actually I'm right. And I think, and obviously he's not, but that's how deluded he is, and so it's not effective against him. Plus he's rambling now, and the audience probably they're going to battle to follow along. And as long as he repeats something, and this happens, by the way, I've had Muslim apologists doing this, saying, "Well, oh, you agree with me." No, I don't agree with you. You've twisted the words, or you've latched onto something and then spun it in your own way, and then claimed that I, or in this case Tom, agrees with you, or whatever the case is, right? And the gullible audience just hears the word "I agree with you," and they go, "Wow, he's agreeing." Well, obviously he's refuted him. You know, this is the sort of tactic that goes on, and for brains that aren't fully engaged, they just hypnotically led along this, and certain key words are the things that they're picking up on and going, "Oh wow, that was amazing." But if you ask them, as I've said many times, they've got nothing substantial to say, right? But their brains are in a hypnotic state, and they just don't realize it.
Do this type of bad behavior. So this obviously would fall under the definition of a coincidence. You said something, but really you were meaning something else, but what you said kind of does agree with science. And that's all I'm saying, what we are saying about the Quran. Look, this verse, it is not a matter of me just making the fact, kind of reading science into the Quran. That actually...
The irony of him saying that, the exact opposite. That's exactly what you're doing here. The irony of him claiming or thinking that he's not doing that, that's like irony in the capital letters in neon glowing bold.
Is a very logical and sensible explanation for the verse. There's many, like I said, a lying, sinful nasiya. The verse literally says that it is his front part of the head which is causing him to lying and sinful. So what he says, why does this count as evidence? Because this adds to the case of coincidence. We have now 3 coincidences. In fact, TJ gave me the best example right there. I want to punch him in the face, head. That's an awesome example of a coincidence. Now we have 3 examples of coincidences. Do you see where this is going? You see, a coincidence is something unexpected. Oh, what a pleasant surprise. I didn't really mean to that. But if you saw it happen 3 times in a row, then this cannot be coincidences.
This can't be coincidence. If something happens 3 times in a row, this must be miraculous. Can you see how low this guy's bar is? It's literally on the floor. If you were dragging your feet, you might trip over it. This is the best he can do, and somebody takes this guy seriously and he's on a platform.
Yeah, but the thing is, he's contradicting himself, because first he said this is coincidence, and now he's saying it's not coincidence. So,
he's saying one is a coincidence, but you have all 3. These can't all be coincidence.
Exactly.
This must be something more.
And here's an interpretation by Jalalain, actually one of my favorites. A lying, iniquitous, I don't know how to say this, forelock. The description of this forelock in such terms is meant figuratively, and what is actually meant is that individual. So Jalalain is practically saying this is just a figure of speech. There's nothing scientific about this.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these verses are like that, right? They are potentially metaphorical to apparently to bring some other point up, but instead of recognizing the verse in its context as a metaphorical part to maybe teach something potentially, he's jumping on it and looking at it as if it's literally the case, right? That's how bad this is for him as well. Not only is it not meant in that way, it's specifically lightly meant in a way to drive home another point, and it's like almost like a metaphor, but he's not even understanding or taking it that way, and then claiming that he's got a valid interpretation, and yet that there are many, or there's more than one valid interpretation, and yet those valid interpretations are in conflict with each other. If it's the forehead, then it cannot be a tuft of hair, or if it's a tuft of hair, cannot be the forehead, right? Those cannot both be the same at the same time.
But why are Muslims not cringing here? Why aren't Muslims saying, listen, Mister, please shut up. You're damaging Islam. You're damaging our reputation. You're making us look like idiots. Why doesn't anybody jump
Well,
in?
the only people who would say that, though, would be some potentially now, only because he's been through the mill himself. Somebody like Hamza Tortoise would say to the guy, if he was honest at that moment, he'd say to the guy, hang on a moment, no, don't do this, right? He might be somebody, I'm not sure whether he would do it publicly, but, he may say this, but it's only because he's learnt his lesson the hard way. I don't know that Nadir Ahmed is intellectually honest or has the cognitive ability to learn in the same way. So I think there's a difference there. I think we disagree with both of them. One person can change their mind because of, they've been hammered on it. This guy, doesn't matter what you say, he wouldn't change his mind, right? That's the difference there.
Yeah,
No.
because I've done to Nadir what I did to Tsotzis. And Nadir just simply doesn't I don't know, it doesn't register. He just keeps repeating the same thing that I've showed him is not true, and he just repeats it.
Yeah, so there's nothing you could bring him to show him that this was incorrect, right? He's still going to spin it in his own way. So somebody like this, they're virtually, nothing can help them, right? They can't think critically. Whatever you say, it's just like water off a duck's back. And actually, this isn't a debate. So whatever you could bring the strongest thing, he's still just going to ignore it and carry on making his claims regardless, right? That's the sort of person that you're speaking. Recognize that. Now you're not speaking. If I didn't know this guy and I'd done a discussion with him, once I realized this, I'd no longer be speaking to him. I'd be appealing, and in fact I'd be speaking to the audience. I'd like be ignoring him at this point, and I'd say, if you're listening to this, blah blah blah, right, you are who I'm speaking to. This guy here is just a sounding board. He's just making some noise, and I'm really speaking to you. I'm hoping you'll engage your brains and let me say this to you. Let me hope that you do right, and I'd be speaking to them. I wouldn't even engage him in that way. I just respond to things that I hear him saying, but I'm now speaking to the audience and not him, because I know that nothing that I say is going to reach his ears, or that it's going to reach his ears, but it's going to go in one ear and straight out the other.
And here's another interpretation by Ibn al-Qasir, just very quickly. The lying sinful forehead, meaning the forehead of Abu Jahl, is lying in the statements and sinful in its actions. So it's talking about Abu Jahl in another interpretation. So clearly,
but then Mustafa, he's going to claim that says it's the forehead, and that's what science says, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I think that's in conflict with the other one, which is there's a tuft of hair, and I think that's all we needed to point out there. For any Muslim who's listening, it's a case of like it's either the one or the other. What's the most straightforward one? It's the tuft of hair. He's taking a different interpretation, which contradicts the first one, and on what basis is he doing so, right? And I think those are the questions that I was hoping Tom would ask. But I think Tom at this moment in time is kind of a bit in a trance himself, and so all that happens is he's trying to respond by saying, hey, but other people did this as well. Hey, nobody takes this seriously. And I just think that that's not a particularly strong response in this regard. And I think you should be appealing to the audience and getting them to think and asking for clarification from Nadir about why he's taking these ones.
The science over and over again, we cannot look at this as coincidence anymore. There's got to be.
Can you see how he just keeps repeating himself, right? This is just a tactic, right? This can't be coincidence. This can't be coincidence. If you say it enough times, some gullible minds will believe it, and they will start repeating in their head. They won't necessarily say out loud. Then in their head, this can't be coincidence. That's how you indoctrinate people. You say things over and over. You say a few words in the middle, and you keep repeating key phrases, key words. And the brain, well, some brains that are slightly hypnotized, then sort of just take that on. It becomes like osmosis. They will go out and say, this can't be, and then they won't remember where they've heard this, but it'll have reached the brain, right? So that's how some of this technique works.
I read somewhere, or I heard, I can't even remember where, what, how, a very nice one. Repeating the Titanic did not sink is not going to make it float.
Correct. But people who don't know that the Titanic sunk, you repeat it enough times, they might believe that. And especially if you do it with certainty, right? Those two things coupled together, repetition and certainty, for people who don't know any better or who can't think about things or realize that there's evidence one way or the other, they will likely go and repeat that to somebody else. I think we've all heard those sort of stories and said, oh, I heard X, Y, and Z. I've been guilty of that when I think back in the past, right? I've repeated things that I've heard without researching them because it sounded like the person knew what they were talking about. And here's the same sort of thing going on.
another explanation. So let me move on to the next scientific fact. Go ahead, TJ.
Okay. All right, Tom, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, so apparently Nadir thinks saying alcohol is bad, inspiring people that follow you, and saying that you want to grab someone by the front of the head because you're angry at them is somehow evidence of God. Like, these are the most mundane, boring facts imaginable. Hinduism has better predictions by like a significant margin, by like millions of times. It predicts the Earth is 4.3 billion years old, and it's actually 4.5. So they were pretty close on that one. That's really good. They predict the multiverse hypothesis. That's pretty good. They predicted certain, like the entire book predicts things about how the future is going to unfold and how societies are going to develop, and they got these right. These are good predictions. Like, nothing Nadir said are good predictions. These are just kind of like a joke. These aren't serious. None of these are serious forms of evidence. It's just like, I predict the sun will come to rise tomorrow. Woohoo. Okay, cool. That's great. I can predict last week's lottery numbers, and he thinks these are special. Is the Donald Trump argument. He's just, nobody knew about these facts before Muhammad discovered them, therefore these are significant. Like, no, everyone already knew about this. These are not valid arguments. This is kind of a joke.
No, I'm not happy with that.
Yeah, neither am I.
Okay, I think it would be more, I don't know what. All he has to do is say, look, just go and verify just one thing properly. Well, all you've done is you've made some claims and you've said, okay, this is true, this is true. What you need to do is you need to show, number one, that this is where the brain actually forms the lies. Then you need to show how there is a connection between the forelock and the contents of the brain, and so on. So he just needs to take the individual points and say, okay, verify them point by point. This is how he needs to push him against the ropes and not allow him to just say, well, coincidence, and by the way, the Hindus also did this. I don't like this.
I think, Stops, that would be better done in a video, like you do this in a video. Trying to get him to do that in a discussion like this, you got no chance, right? Firstly, he's anti-scientific. He's clueless on those sort of how that all works. And all you're going to give him the opportunity is to ramble and repeat himself. So in a live discussion, I'm not sure that would be good. But in a video where you could show this to people and actually present the science and show them, I think that would be spectacularly good to do this. I think that with the Hindu examples and stuff like that, you could go to the Hindus, but I'm not sure that that's particularly helpful. But I think what you could do is give an example and say, okay, here's what would convince me. Hey, Nadir, do you think that, I'm just giving you an example, if the Quran talked about in fine detail quantum physics and explained the, what's it called, where the particle could be in two places at once. Yeah, quantum tunneling, but there's another term for it. Quantum indeterminacy, but there's another term. I can't remember it, but whatever the language was. If this could be finely and precisely done, that nobody possibly until the middle of the 20th century knew about, or early 20th century perhaps, that would be quite interesting, right? So is there anything that remotely demonstrate this, or are you going to hang your hat on these vague, mundane claims about what you claim is something scientific that nobody could have known, when of course this was clearly known at the time? Is this the best you can do? And I think it's almost to make fun of them by giving counterexamples that might, to the people who are listening, that might actually be impressive. Because the Hindu one as well, we'd have to go read the books to see if that's the case. But I think you can just bring it up yourself without appealing to other religions, because they probably got a lot wrong as well. Spooky action at a distance, yeah. But there's a name for it, entanglement. There we go. There we've got the people in the chat that quantum entanglement. If they spoke about that and it was clearly described there, you go, ooh, okay, that is something we've got to give pause on now. We can't just hand wave that away. But of course, it's like nothing like that. And in fact, as we've mentioned before, these sort of things are often said in a metaphorical story, or there's a point that's trying to be made at the end, and these sort of things are just layered in there into this like story/metaphor that he's extracting and then trying to make it literal. And that's obviously, even worse.
Okay. All right, Nadir, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, okay, so basically he's submitting more false information. He says everybody knew about the issue about the front forehead being the area for decision making. This is factually incorrect. I mean,
look at his face there. He never said that at all, right? Did anybody hear him say that?
No.
He said that other people did predictions that are much better than that. I don't remember him saying anything that everybody knew about the forehead, but at least some people would have known about that in any case, as in like, well, the forehead, what's the forehead, right? Which part is the forehead, which isn't, right? Again, it's kind of very vague. But did you hear? He just says the word false again. So again, if you say this, if you just say false, but don't demonstrate it, and you just repeat what straw. So talk about a straw man. No point. And that's why Tom, if you see his face there, was like, what? Huh? I never said that, right? But he's not interrupting. But the face says it all.
So there's no real reason to chase after straw man arguments. So
the irony of him straw manning Tom and then say he's got to chase after straw man. See, these are the catchphrases. Just listen as you pay attention here. How many times he says the same sort of key words all the time without actually substantiating anything at all.
But they love these two things. They always use the strawman and the ad hominem because they don't understand what they actually are, but they always throw them out. The same as epistemology. They don't know what it is, but they use it all the time.
Yeah.
Strawmans, but factually incorrect. He says he's again saying alcohol is bad, therefore it's some kind of proof for God. That I hope everybody can hear tonight. That's not my argument here. Okay. Then he brings up the issue of Hinduism, and there's predictions and stuff on that, and he submitted more false information in there. The issue, there were Hindu scientists which created that prediction and wrote it in a book. So this is even more false information, but that's okay. I don't care. If you can find another book which is scientifically miraculous, Allahu Akbar. That does not do anything for the case of the Quran. We can't.
Stop. So he says that it was Hindu scientists. So why is he applying the same analysis to Muslim scientists then?
No, well, he's not saying. Well, I'm not sure if he's saying that. I think what he's trying to claim is that Muhammad wasn't a scientist. He was like pretty clueless, and Allah through Muhammad said these miraculous things that couldn't have possibly, all these coincidences together. And we've heard it before, right? It just cannot be coincident. There must be something else going on here. That's the main claim that he's making. Not that it was Muslim scientists. He might appeal to them that they were inspired by the Quran in some way. But as Tom pointed out, people can be inspired by all kinds of things.
Right.
You'd have to show that there was something in the Quran that couldn't have possibly been known elsewhere that got them thinking about something that they otherwise couldn't have got to. And there's nothing in there that says that. That would be, he's made a lot of tenuous statements. So maybe there is something he would try and make it tenuous. Say, hey, look, the optics, when you look at the sun and, that inspired, Al-Haytham to do optics or some nonsense like that, right? He could spin it in that way. I don't think we would take it seriously, though. But that's why I said, did you see how he hops on Hinduism? I think if you bring up Hinduism, it's just another opportunity for him to bat away something else and say, look, I scored a point here. So you've got to be very careful when you introduce other things. I'd rather just bring an example that I think, just obliterates them, something like quantum entanglement, that I bring up myself and say, hey, if that was in the Quran, it was clearly explained, that would be quite impressive. But let's compare that with your mundane claims. And that's what I want the audience to look at and to think, hang on a moment, there's something that is unique, that's special, that definitely couldn't have been known. And what have we got here? Forelock.
Yeah.
Or, the other claims that he's making there that are so mundane, right? And then when you compare and contrast.
Now you're introducing something where he can say, but do you understand quantum entanglement? Can you explain it? Please tell us.
Yeah, I could give a basic definition of it, but all I would have to say is that we know for sure that wasn't something that people could have known before the time. And if the Quran had said something accurate about that, precise and accurate, and ideally dated, that would be even more impressive. So we add those criteria that you and I came up with, Stops. Those things would move us towards the idea that this couldn't have been something by humans. But what you're providing, compare and contrast them, you're providing mundane, vague things, and then you're taking an interpretation which, by your own admission, there's more than one interpretation, and you're taking the more tenuous one and claiming that agrees with science, and then patting yourself on the back. How delusional can you be? This is dogmatism.
Remember, there's people saying, well, in due time, we will be able to see this in the Quran, and we will realize the Quran has said it all along.
Yeah, but that's unfalsifiable, and those sort of claims are, completely uninteresting, and we can just ignore those. If there isn't a time thing, if it isn't precise, everybody should be ignoring it. And the fact that other people think it's good just shows what the level of critical thinking that they are lacking. And I just move on from there. What else do you want to do with that?
But they do say that.
I think one day the earth will cease to exist. There we go. I've made a prediction. One day that'll happen. Right? Might be 5 billion years from now when it's swallowed by the red giant, and then I'll be okay. Nobody's around, right? Yeah. Please color me impressed when you can give me a precise date, time, information that couldn't have otherwise been known, and that if it comes and goes and it's falsified, your view is falsified, right? Like Harold Camping. At least he put a date on there, and obviously looked incredibly foolish when the next day came, although his followers still believed after that, right? He changed the prediction, and they all were even more firm in their belief. That just shows you how uncritical a human mind can be, how malleable it can be. But give me something like that. That's the sort of stuff I'll be challenging you on, not this mundane stuff that you can take your own interpretation on and then pat yourself on the back.
Accept that, actually, because we know that God sent many prophets, not just from Abrahamic prophets, but also
that.
the whole world, and fragments of...
Exactly. I heard that same thing, Stops, as you. We know this. Where's the evidence of this, please? Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Right, but this is what these apologists do. We know this, da-da-da-da-da, and not enough of this, of us, are claiming to want the evidence for this. And once we ask them that, that's the end of the story. Then all you'll hear is a lot of rambling and babbling and nothing substantial, right? But you just keep asking for it. That's why Jack Angstrike was so good with Muhammad Hijab. Just kept asking for the argument until Hijab had to try and challenge Jack on his beliefs about things because he had no argument. So all that'll happen is you will see the tactics they will invoke when they can't back up their claims. They'll try and shift the goalposts or shift the burden to you, either one of those two things, in an attempt at getting out of having to substantiate their vacuous claims. But when nobody challenges them, then they'll say it with abandon as if it's the fact of the matter.
that information could be present in many books. So by you bringing up Hinduism, it does nothing to the case of the Quran. But anyway, that is even a misrepresentation of Hinduism, what he's giving. But I can't chase after that. I got to very quickly move on to the next scientific information, which we find in the Quran. Okay. And so let me go ahead and share my desktop over here real quick here again. And this is talking about barriers in the sea here. So what I'm going to go very quickly through this. I got 30 seconds. So what we see over here, the Quran.
I think, well, let's for the people who haven't heard the stops, maybe you can let him do the verse, and then you can just explain this to everybody who may have heard it but doesn't know the information. So I think that's why I said this is useful, not because he's going to make these comments. We know this is bollocks, but for you to explain, because you've done this even better than I have. You just explain why it's complete bollocks, right?
No,
So let's just listen to him.
He came on the Jinn and Tonic show with this.
I know.
He is going to say it's about Barzak and things like. He was here.
Well,
on
let him
the
do
Jinn
it,
and
Stops.
Tonic show.
Let him do it, and then you just refute the nonsense, right? But because he's going to obviously make these claims, so let's just hear it quickly.
Says it's like,
And here it is. So for people who are looking, it's 58, 19, and 20. I think it is
chapter 55, verse 19 and 20.
55. Sorry.
That in the seas there are barriers. Look what science says over here. It talks about in the seas where the picnic line is a distinct feature, for example, in the Baltic, blah, 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 it is a barrier which prevents deep waters from mixing with the surface water. Okay, so here we see once again an agreement between the Quran and science. Go ahead.
All right, Stops. You go ahead and explain to the audience there, please.
Funny enough, I was wrong. He didn't mention the word Barzak. What he's simply doing is it's the same thing as with a theory. If you're talking about a scientific theory, it is not the same thing as if a layman talks about a theory. In a scientific paper, it will call something a barrier, the same thing as in air. You have hot air and cold air, and there's a barrier between them. That does not mean they don't mix. What he fails to understand, which is what I've tried to explain to him, if I have a boat and it has water particles from one ocean on it, and it goes into the next ocean, will these water particles be able to, I don't know, get transferred from one ocean to the next? According to the Quran, no, because the water from the one ocean cannot mix with the water of the other ocean. So the boat should hit a barrier, and that's it. It cannot move any further. But that does not happen. There is not a barrier. This is it's a hypothetical, I don't know, description of something where you have like a cold front and a hot front, and there is a barrier between them. Of course the water mixes. Of course it does. And we have the best example for this is when a container sank with rubber ducks. And all of a sudden, all over the planet, we had rubber ducks. So this was actually a very good example, and for the oceanographers to actually check how much and how long it actually takes for the water to move from one area to the next. So this is absolute nonsense. And I agree that, for example, if you go to Cape Agulhas, and I've been there, and you can look out at the ocean and you can see the limit, the line, there's like a straight line between the Indian and the Atlantic Ocean because of the different salinity, because of different attributes. And that is it. But they do mix. It's not a solid barrier or something the way it is described in the Quran. The same way as you have a horizontal barrier when it rains, for example. And of course, salt water and fresh water mixes. There is no barrier that the rain suddenly stays on top, and what he is saying here is that at the bottom the water doesn't mix. Of course it does. It's just that when you go diving, you can actually feel the different layers of temperatures. But it's just that it's a layer. So I was able to go between the layers. If there would be a barrier, I wouldn't be able to do so. So this whole thing is total nonsense.
Yeah, but also it's observable, right? You've said it yourself. It's observable, and you don't have to go down deep. You can infer that if it happens at the top, it's likely to happen lower down. Again, this is just an inference. So even if we accept all of this, right, none of this is miraculous stuff. This is not something that couldn't have been known, because all you do is infer that if you can see it, which, as you said, is observable in certain parts of the world where the two sort of appear to meet and make, quote unquote, a barrier, which is just a meeting point. And when you swim, you can feel the different levels of, ocean currents and so forth. None of this is miraculous. Again, compare this with, for example, if the Quran had talked about black holes and an event horizon, which, by the way, nobody knew that there were any other galaxies in existence prior to about 1910 or whatever.
29.
Was it 29?
It was Hubble.
Well, they needed
Hubble
a bigger
who showed-
telescope, right? Yeah, they needed more powerful telescopes, because everything you can see with the naked eye when you look up at the sky is stars. They didn't know the Andromeda Galaxy was a galaxy.
Exactly.
Because at the time it looked like a star. So everything that the eye can see, especially to the uneducated, are stars in our own galaxy. So once they had telescopes big enough, suddenly the universe became magnitudes of order bigger when they realized that in fact there were other island universes, as they called them in those days. Right? Had the Quran talked about, and at the center of all of these, as far as we can tell, is a supermassive black hole. Had the Quran accurately talked about that, and the fact that light cannot escape, and when you reach the event horizon, then the gravity is so strong that nothing in the universe, as far as we can tell, can escape from this, that would have been interesting.
the Hawking
Compare that
radiation.
to the barrier of water that you can see when you observe it, and tell me which one is more miraculous, had nobody known prior. The question answers itself.
Okay. All right, Tom, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, so apparently Nadir doesn't know about Hinduism or about facts. So again, the fact that there are barriers in the water, we knew that, or the Neanderthals knew that, because they would build ships and hit reefs and things, and they realized, hey, look, there's an island. Hey, look, there's a smaller island. Hey, look, a smaller island that barely touches the water. Oh, look, there's one that's under the water that destroys our boats when we go over it. There's barriers in the sea. Like, this is, wow. Like, oh my God. Nobody knew there were barriers in the sea. Nobody knew. Hilarious. That's none of the things Nadir presented are actually evidence. That's kind of just ambiguity fallacies of gibberish, and it's like you could pick better facts here. Like, if you actually really tried to ambiguate these, you can make them into good predictions, but Nadir just makes them into the most bland nonsense thing.
Yeah, I think that's what Tom could do, actually, is say, hey, like, give an example like I have. That would be, quite interesting, that would be a startling prediction, right? So give examples. Don't appeal to Hinduism and stuff, because that's just easy for him to bat away. When you give your own examples that are scientific, that's much harder. He can say, well, you're just giving examples. Yes, but I'm giving examples that are actually, something that would be spectacular. You're giving examples that are utterly mundane, and nobody, not even you, but, forget about you, anybody else who's listening, should even bat an eyelid about. The fact that you think it's that is spectacular just shows how low your standard is, and how low that it has to be, because all you've got is this mundane book that's making these, even if we accepted your interpretations, these are utterly mundane. And then there are such things that people can know, so it's not a coincidence. So your whole thing of building this straw man of coincidence, as if this couldn't happen, is just, we could just blow that over quite easily.
Yeah, but all he's doing is this equivocation where he's saying, well, the one uses the word barrier and the other one uses the word barrier, so I'm just going to pretend it's the same barrier. That doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly.
And evidence, like a good prediction is like his Hindu cosmology predicts that in the Vishnu Purana, that ancient Hindu scripture is 4.3 billion years was the age of the earth, which is close to the 4.5 billion years. Like, these are literally quotes from the actual Hindu scripture.
And he could say, how come the Quran doesn't do this, right? How is it the Quran can't do something as maybe, and even that's not particularly spectacular, but it's better than anything else I've heard. Why doesn't the Quran accurately predict or tell us the age of the earth, right? That would be
accurate.
somewhat.
Rob, there's nothing accurate in the Quran.
I know, but what I'm saying is
If
he
it
should
is
be
accurate,
saying,
it's wrong.
Yeah, this was a good. What Rob is trying to say is this was a good opportunity to say
Yes.
if the Quran did the Quran say something like this?
yeah,
Like these exist, and they predict that cities will be dominated by thieves. The Vedas will be contaminated by speculative interpretations of atheists, political leaders, and will virtually consume the citizens. Well, holy shit, they got that one right. They're amazing. Like, masters will abandon their incompatible servants, and even if that servant has been in the family for generations.
yeah. I don't think this is helpful, right? Because you are taking vagaries, and now you're kind of doing what he's doing. Although it's maybe it's a little bit more plausible. It's still not something that he would believe himself. So all he's doing is pointing out that other scriptures also made predictions, but he himself wouldn't accept, although they're slightly closer to quote unquote science. I'm not sure that that's ideal, because somebody could turn around and go, do you believe these are true? No. So why are you giving them? And Tom could say, well, okay, because they're slightly better than yours. Yeah, I'm not sure that that's a great way of doing it, to be honest.
Cows will be abandoned or killed when they stop giving milk. Wow, they knew agriculture was going to work. Like, you could just read the Srimad Bhagavatam and you get tons of predictions about society, exactly like in every religious text. Like, there's nothing special about this. This isn't an argument that there's lots of holy texts. There's an argument of lots of random people writing random stuff and they get lots of intuitive guesses right. Like, there's none of this is evidence. I mean, at least these are good. At least the Hindu ones are good. The ones in Europe are just silly.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the Hindu ones are good. All you could argue is that they're better than the Quran, but
Yeah,
then again,
exactly.
almost anything is better than the Quran at this stage.
Yeah.
So, but that's a very low bar that you're setting there anyway. I wouldn't be impressed by any of the Hindu ones either, right? So, and I hope Tom is not, although he seems to be suggesting that he might be. I think he's setting the bar a little bit low there myself.
Barriers in the ocean, like, really?
Okay. All right, Nadir, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, so what he's actually doing, he's giving me the rope to hang him with here tonight. He gave out
Can you see that? It doesn't matter what Tom says. He could say anything and he's still going to say, well, he's agreeing with me or he's giving me the rope, right? Just listen to this guy, right? This is the sort of catchwords. It doesn't matter what you say. So at this point, you're not actually speaking to him. You shouldn't be.
another beautiful example of a coincidence. Okay, and I think what it is, he doesn't understand what a coincidence is, but that's okay. We're all
That's okay. I'll just keep repeating the words over and over and hope that the gullible and ignorant will somehow think that I've said something substantial.
I hope this will be a good learning opportunity for you.
Well, we are learning, Nadir. We're learning all about your underhanded tactics and your dogmatism and your anti-scientific approach and the low bar that you've got to have in order to try and claim that the Quran says something scientific. We've learned a lot. Thank you very much. It's been very informative.
This is laughable. You can only laugh at this. There's nothing there. All you could do is just laugh and say, well, forget it.
TJ. The whole thing appealed to Hinduism. Obviously, I cannot debate Hinduism right here, but I'm okay with that. That doesn't take away from the case of the Quran in any way.
There you go. You see, it doesn't matter what you said. If you brought another religion and they got spot on with quantum mechanics, general relativity, black holes, evolution, neuroscience, he's going to say, well, all of that stuff doesn't take away from the Quran. It doesn't matter how much better it is than the Quran. He's still just going to delusionally claim that it doesn't take away from the Quran. That's why bringing other things like other religions isn't helpful. I think it's better, if you're going to go this route, is just to bring other scientific claims that are much more precise, that nobody in history knew about. Those are much more impressive to us today than anything that Hindus or anybody else said.
There be 2 or 3 miraculous supernatural books. I'm totally cool with that. That doesn't take away from anything of my evidence.
If there are others, do you hear this? He's okay with other supernatural books saying things. Well, if they say something, then your book can't be true. Only one of the supernatural, if there is a supernatural, either their supernatural is true or your supernatural is true. I mean, I don't think he's actually knows what he's saying at this moment in time.
I think he's saying that they're both saying the same thing.
No, I think he's saying that both of them are making scientific predictions, but he's okay with the other books making scientific predictions. Well, if they do, and they are correct, well, then you are wrong. So you have to. If I'm in his position, I'd be saying no, but they aren't actually doing it. I think they're wrong. These were just guesses, right? And that can't be the case. But look at mine, how wonderful mine are. Of course, his aren't wonderful, So I don't know why he's saying he's okay with other ones being okay, because they contradict his ones. In other words, those gods, if those gods are true, his God is false by definition. So I don't know why he's even accepting that they are supernatural books. They're claims by other people to have supernatural books, but by his light, everybody else is wrong. So they can't possibly be supernatural books. They're simply claims about supernatural books.
This is yet another irrelevant point, and this is a death blow to atheism. When we see evidence of a divine creator, which you yourself are acknowledging now.
Do you hear this? Can you hear the disingenuous, utter nonsense that comes out of this guy's mouth? Do you know why? That's why somebody like I would never waste time with this guy. We'll do it in a review here. We'll utterly expose this vacuousness, this dishonesty. This is somehow a death knell to atheists. And that Tom is now agreeing with him. Didn't I say earlier that no matter what you say, he's going to say that you're agreeing with him? Doesn't matter what you say, you're going to agree with him. I had this with Shabir Yusuf. But you're agreeing with me. When in fact, I'm saying exactly the opposite. But the gullible audience will hear the word you're agreeing with me. They won't remember the rest, right? But they will hear you're agreeing with me. And go, oh, well, he must have been refuted. He's now agreeing with me. What was he agreeing with again? No idea. But he said he's agreeing with him, so he must be the case. This is how hypnotism works.
Why should we believe in atheism? And you're supposed to be an atheist. Yet you are now showing how there is supernatural evidence in these books. But all that is irrelevant. But I like your example you gave. Look, you go out in the seas and you could hit a reef. Or what about islands? You could hit an island, right? So yeah, that's kind of like a barrier. Right. But that's not the way. So maybe that is what he was really referring to, an island, okay, or something like that. But he articulated and worded the Quran in such a way which does agree with modern science, as we can see from the screen here. It says, between them is a barrier which none of them can transgress. And we know in science that the seas do have a barrier. It's called the pycnocline. It is a barrier which prevents deep waters from mixing with blah, blah, blah. I already read that to you. Okay, you can look.
Yeah, well, that's not true anyway. And as you say, they do mix. So that barrier is not a true barrier in the sense of the word anyway. That's just sort of where the waters mix, and it's a much more vague barrier than he wants to claim. But they eventually do mix anyway. So
get the screen to get all my references. So here yet is another coincidence. Muhammad didn't mean to talk about the pycnocline, but he just worded it in a way which I actually agreed with the pycnocline. Coincidence after coincidence after coincidence. Right now, I believe I'm ready to make the case and finish him off, showing you that this cannot be the work of man. Is that my time?
Yes, that's your time. Okay.
See the whole thing? This can't be the work of man. These 5 coincidences are just incredible.
Okay, Tom, you have 2 minutes.
From what we heard, we literally heard Nadir read the quote. We can prove definitively this is what's called an ambiguity fallacy in philosophy. That literally it can be interpreted in many ways. It doesn't refer to anything in particular and can be proved to not be evidence definitively. And every rigorous standard of formal logic, like we know that doesn't work. I don't think Nadir knows standard logic or what fallacies are or history. And you keep using the Trump argument. Nobody knew this common facts that everyone knew. Therefore, Muhammad and the Quran, like none of that's evidence. Like I'm good. I can stop there.
He could have said more. He could have said more.
Yeah, particularly weak, right? And if you watch Nadir there, he's not listening to Tom at all, right? He's looking at the screen so he can say his next thing. Not interested in what Tom is saying at all. Not that Tom is saying very much here, just that it's an ambiguity fallacy and he's incredulous that Nadir can do this, which is fine, but it's not substantive that might persuade somebody else, especially somebody who's on the fence. Maybe it's a Muslim who's going, I'm not sure about these scientific miracles. I've heard something about this. What has the other guy got to say about this so that I can get 2 sides on this? And I don't think Tom is doing enough here to potentially persuade somebody who's undecided on this. He's just giving what amounts to or sounds like his own opinion. Nadir's doing the same, but he's wording it in such a way that the gullible people might think that it's actually facts. And he uses those key words to make it sound as if that's the case as well, when of course all of us know that that's not even remotely the case.
Okay, all right. So Nadir, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, so I won't even chase after the straw man that nobody knew this common fact. That's not my argument at all. Okay, so what I'm showing you here is, look, when you see something which agrees with science, it can be many possible explanations. I wrote in bold on my opening presentation that all the Quran, the scientific information that you see in the Quran, hypothetically can be produced by a human being. But what is not possible is to continuously get it right over and over and over again. I mean, author things in the Quran which agree with science. You could, 2 or 3 of them, you can say, okay, that was not your intent. You meant to talk about islands, but you just said it like this. Let's look at some more coincidences. Okay, over here. Inside chapter 24, verse 40 over here. It says over in this verse, or is it like the darkness in the vast deep sea, overwhelmed with great waves, topped by great waves, topped by dark clouds, darkness one above the other. If a man stretches out his hands, he can hardly see it. And for him who Allah has not appointed light, for him there is no light. So what we know, it says in the vast deep sea. That's open for interpretation.
Okay, so here he's going to cherry pick certain words. He's even admitting that it's open to interpretation. This is like an own goal that he doesn't even realize. Like, he's got a firearm in his hand and he's telling you about the firearm. He's shooting himself in the foot, and the pain doesn't register. He doesn't know that he's actually shot himself in the foot, and he carries on teaching you about this gun and how wonderful this gun is, not realizing that he's shot himself. Like the pain receptors are just not operational here. This is kind of what's going on for this guy.
It could be like
This is an example which word for word was brought up here on the Jinn and Tonic show, literally. And we showed him that something between 80 and 85% of all creatures in the dark sea, at the bottom of the ocean or whatever, have bioluminescence, and there is no way that you can get around this. The same thing with all the smokers, yellow, white, black, and whatever. There is a lot of light. You cannot say that it's completely dark. And we showed him this on the show here a couple of years ago, and yet here he is saying the same identical thing again.
That tells you everything
terrible.
you need to know, right? It doesn't
That's
matter
so
what you
terrible.
say to him. It's irrelevant who he's speaking to and what they say. As soon as you know this about somebody like this, there's no speaking to somebody like this, right? You're looking for somebody who will respond to your counterclaims or whatever the case may be with something, or stop doing it like Tsortzis did. At least Tsortzis realized that he'd eventually got to a point where this was, he couldn't continue doing this and be taken seriously. This guy just doesn't even realize that nobody takes him seriously. He's that deluded, right? At least Tsortzis realized that. But somebody like this utterly deluded guy, unless you want to just have fun with us and just see it as a total joke, but if you want to have a serious discussion, then this is not possible with this guy. Other than if once you know everything he's going to say, all you do is respond. Again, you ignore him entirely, and all you do is, like you're doing, Stops, is you respond with the facts. Every time he brings one up, your 2 minutes is just the facts. But then you've got to know all of the things that he's going to say ahead of time, and you've got it prepared, and you just respond as quickly as you can in 2 minutes, saying, okay, and here's what the actual fact is. And then he gets blah, 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 and you say, I'm not interested in what he's saying there. That's just vacuous nonsense. I'm now going to give you the facts on the next vacuous claim. And so you start to use keywords as well, and you just respond that way. But then you've got to do your homework, and you've got to know what he's going to be saying, or be able to bring it up very quickly when you need to. And that's not so easy to do, unless you know all the stuff ahead of time.
Into the sea. Well, and in the Bible and other books kind of talk about that in the vast deep seas. That's what I mean. They're going far out into the sea. But if you look at the text, if you stretch out your hand, you can hardly see it. Now you're talking about something inside. 2 scientifically correct statements in here. It talked about great waves topped with great waves. And we all know from science today that there are things within the seas called internal waves. There's the waves on top, and of course there's the internal waves. And I'll get you a reference for that in just a second here. But not only that, but we also know that once you travel down, I think like 1,000 meters down into the ocean, you are going to come to a point where there is absolutely no light. For example, 600 feet. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
So again, how does he know that this person, where you stretch out your hand, you can be in a darkness of, where I'm out in the countryside. It's so dark when there's no lights on that you literally can't see. If there's no light, and there's no light from the stars, or there's no moon or anything like that, and that sort of thing, you can hardly see the hand in front of your face, which is again common knowledge. So if you can't see it outside in the darkness, above the seas, again, just a little bit of thinking, the lower you go down, the more likely it is that, because it's more dense than air, at some point you're not going to be able to see the hand in front of your face if there were no bioluminescent fishes or whatever the case is. Again, utterly mundane. There's no coincidence. This is an utterly mundane claim that you can see, or you can observe basically the same sort of thing on a moonless night if you have no lights around you. So again, But again, he cherry picks certain parts of the verse here, then wants to claim that the deep sea is also talking about, you can't see your hand in front of you, and this must be referring to being 1,000 meters down. Where does it say anything about that? Just makes the shit up, right? This is like building bridges when there are no bridges to be built. He's just making stuff up, trying to link these together with his own spurious claims to then say, look, this is a scientific miracle. I think we've said enough of this now. I think anybody who's listening here probably heard this multiple times now. We're just going to keep repeating it for these sort of claims just so that everybody can hear that we've been over this.
All right, Tom, you have 2 minutes.
Wow, another benign fact everyone knew at the time, that the deeper you go in water, the darker it gets. So probably at the bottom, there's no light. Like when you look down, you see nothing because light doesn't reflect off the bottom. Again, another super benign fact that everyone knew that isn't evidence of anything. Like, I don't know why Nadir thinks these are special. Like, any 8-year-old could have predicted these at the time of Muhammad. Like, there's nothing special here. I don't get it. Again, real predictions are made by the Hindu religions, like Ramanujan, the great mathematician, one of the greatest in the world, attributed his mathematics to a god, said it was given to him by a god. Like, at least that's good. Like, that's actual data, actual novel information that no one had discovered before. Nadir is just listing random facts that everyone knew and saying this is special. How?
Rob, this is just going the same
I find
thing
it
again and
hilarious.
again.
It's kind of a repeat too.
Yeah, I think it's enough. Is there going to be anything interesting after this?
I mean, he's bringing up more things here. I don't know how much further this goes. I mean, we can bring it to an end. I think it sort of ends somewhere around 1 hour 20, and we're only at... we've still got another 20 odd minutes to go here of him.
Because then we would have to have a third session on this, and I don't think it's worth it.
Okay, I'll leave it to you guys then.
Do you want to do 2 minutes of Q&A or whatever, just to see if this continues on this level? Or if anybody takes him to task.
Okay, well let's get to where the Q&A might be then.
Because I saw that there was a fourth person in the chat. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like
he's a Muslim, by the way. But okay, let me just go back a few seconds. This guy is a Muslim.
Doesn't look a Muslim, does he?
No, but looks can be deceiving, right?
On and ask your question. Hi, Josh. Welcome to the show.
Hey.
All right, Josh. So you have a question for?
I got a question for TJump. Yeah, like what would it actually take for you to convert to Islam? Like, what would be the definitive argument that Nadir could give that you'd go, okay, yep, I got it. I'm a convert.
Sorry.
Can you skip this? Because this is the same thing we're hearing for 20, 50 times.
Okay. I mean, I've given my idea of what might convince me, right?
Exactly.
A little bit comment as well. Whoever is the brother atheist, I'm not sure what name.
Tom.
Tom. You are a winner in your gestures itself. Your smile is killing. And your eyes, oh my good Lord, expressions are there. So anyway, I was watching this conversation. Is it okay, Tom, if you can address that question where other brother was saying that there is deep waters, and deep waters has layers, and you cannot even see the hand if you pull out. How science actually identify this sort of news?
Yeah, but you see, again, right? He's the same sort of guy. He reads the verse. He just takes what Nadir said. If I'm going to respond to somebody like this, I'm going to go, okay, let's go and look at the verse, brother, because that's his name coming up there. Let's go and look at this together. And let's go and read the verse and see whether it says what he claims. The problem is, brother, your brain has already been primed to see something that isn't actually necessarily there. And once the brain is primed, you can't unprime it. That's just a psychology thing. If you've ever watched that thing, which we've done on here before, right, with Michael Shermer, where he plays a record backwards, and if you listen to the record before he primes your brain, you won't pick up anything. As soon as he primes your brain and he starts to give you what it might sound like, suddenly the record sounds exactly like what he's telling you. And that's just called priming. You prime the brain ahead of time to what it's going to do. And this is exactly what this guy has done. And the problem is it's very difficult to unprime it afterwards. So he will look at it and go, no, but it does say that. When in fact, if you gave him the verse without saying anything to him, or you bring up another verse, that's another way to do it, where his brain hasn't yet been primed, and say, okay, what do you think about this? But then again, you'd have to have this in have to have this in advance. And likely when you aren't priming his brain, he won't come to the same conclusion that Nadir does. Until somebody says, but see it this way. And suddenly the brain gets primed and he goes, oh yeah, actually, I can see it that way now. Right? That's all that happens here.
Some sentences are ambiguous and metaphorical, and some sentences are precise. Which category is this?
Well, exactly. They're going to claim it's precise. Of course, they have to for it to be a scientific miracle. Let's just see if there's anybody else here. Here's another one. I think these were mostly Muslims because this was all on Kenny's channel, so they're going to challenge.
You wouldn't allow me on there, I suppose.
No chance.
You there? Do you have a question for one of the gentlemen, or both of them?
Thank you both for the discussion. Appreciate your time. First, my question is, Tom was it? Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah. So a lot of your explanations have just been, okay, so someone could have done that, someone could have done this and done that. Okay. And I think that's been well responded to. But here's my question. I'd like to see your response. Is it okay if I bring one example, Kenny?
Sure.
Sure. Sorry. In the Quran chapter 21 verse 32 says, and we made the sky a protected ceiling, but they from its signs are turning away. And so my question is, what does the sky protect us from, and what would someone have needed to do to know that at the time?
Okay, now that's interesting. Okay, so let's hear from each of us what we would say to this, right? We didn't know this ahead of time. We're just hearing this now. I promise you, none of us have heard this before. Stops and Mustafa, each of you, and I'll do the same, right? How would you respond to that kid Ramizi claim?
Mustafa, go first.
Actually, no, let me just pull up. I just want to see the verse, actually.
That's a good thing to do.
I would see the verse first, and it says 3 different translations.
What's the verse number again?
2132.
Yeah.
I've heard something from 2130, just 2 verses earlier, and it says here, and we have made the sky a roof withheld from them, yet they turn away from its portents. And then the second one says, and we made the Sahih International says, and we made the sky a protected ceiling, but they, from its signs, are turning away. However, again, to a Muslim apologist, I being a former Muslim, I would have said something like, this is the atmosphere, right? I would have said something like that if I were a Muslim apologist. Now, to counter that, I would say something like, so this is a very vague, ambiguous statement, first. And second, the sky being a ceiling itself, I've actually read these in previous legends, I think in the Alexander romance or something like that. I read that there where the sky was held up by pillars, and then there's another Quran verse that does state the same thing, that the sky, is it held up by pillars? Ask the same question. So that would be kind of would be my direction where I would take it. That it's just repeating what ancient, what ancient texts have said, but there are no, it's a very vague and ambiguous statement. And then I would also look at the different tafsirs as well, right? Because the statement's ambiguous, but then I read different tafsir and what the scholars have to say on this. So yeah, that would be my approach to this.
Actually, just a short correction, it does say that the firmament is held up by pillars that are invisible.
Oh, really? It does say that?
Yeah.
It what's the bird?
Oh no, please don't do that. Just look for invisible pillars in the Quran.
I'll look for it. Don't worry. I'll look for
it. Because it mentions invisible pillars.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So you go ahead.
It's very simple. You take whatever is being claimed. So there are 2 claims here. One is that there's a ceiling, and number 2, there's a protection. Now, number 1, this corresponds to the knowledge of the 7th century that there was a solid firmament. This is what people believed at the time. And this corresponds with what the Quran tells us, that in the lowest level there are stars which are missiles and things like that. So the whole story is exactly that. We have a flat earth with a solid firmament without cracks. Allah is very, very proud of himself and says in the Quran, I think in 2 places even, that there are no cracks and there is no inconsistency in how the firmament is being constructed. If we compare this with today's level of information that we have regarding the Earth's atmosphere, it does not protect us because we have asteroids, we have meteorites, we have radiation, we have all sorts of things. Yes, we have a magnetic shield, sort of, so to speak, which deflects a lot of the matter. And now, even today, we have a solar shit. I've got a block.
Solar radiation?
No, it's a. Come on, what is wrong with you? We have a solar flare. There we go. This is why the aurora borealis at the moment is very strong. So this is due to the magnetism of the Earth because we've got an iron core. But that's about it. So I get sunburned if I go outside. So I'm not being protected. We have a lot of shit that is coming from outside onto Earth, and we can get hit at any moment by a huge asteroid that is coming from the direction of the sun that we cannot see because we can't see the reflection. So Earth can be destroyed at any second from exactly these things. So what he's talking is absolute nonsense. So number one, what the Quran says is totally wrong. And number two, it doesn't do what it says it does. So finished.
Yeah, and it's a good point, Stocks, you bring up that what is the ceiling exactly protecting us from? That's very...
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, right? Because whatever they claim it's protecting you from, as you quite rightly point out, you can give plenty of examples that it's not protecting us from. It's not protecting us from UV radiation. It's not protecting us from asteroids and that sort of stuff. So this protection seems to be a part protection, which isn't really a proper protection. And what do you, Mr. Muslim, claim it's protecting it from? And the other thing that Mustafa said that I think is very good is if you go to the tafsirs, they're talking about it's like we've made the sky like a roof for the earth, and so that it does not fall. Exactly. And it means it's protected from the Satans by the stars. The people of Mecca turn away. They don't believe nor reflect upon its sun, moon, and stars. That's Abbas. Al-Jalalain says we made the heaven a roof for the earth, like the roof of a house, preserved from collapsing, and yet the signs thereof, namely the signs of the heaven, the sun and moons, they are disregardful, failing to reflect on them, and thus realize that the Creator has no partner. And Ibn Kathir, there's signs of Allah in the heavens and the earth and the night and the day. And here Allah tells us of His perfect might and power and His creation and subjugation of all things. So it's a metaphor. Say, look at this wonderful skies and how it's protecting you. And it's supposedly getting them to reflect on this, but they're turning away and not accepting this. In no way is this accurate for science. So, Mr. Muslim person, Kitty, Kali, whatever, why do you think this refers to science rather than it being a metaphor, an example, or a claim, or like a metaphor of how Allah is supposedly protecting? But actually, would you agree that it doesn't actually protect us from UV radiation or asteroids, and that have happened throughout history and still does to this day?
And on top of which, it says that the stars are going to fall on the earth once this protective shield is gone at the end times.
Yeah,
that's how silly this is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to see if there's any other ones here that come up. No, I think that's it. And then Kenny plugs his book. So let's call it for that. I think that's enough of that there. Right. Closing thoughts, and then I guess we're already 10:15. We can do it. What's the name? And then people can join us on Discord, I guess.
I can just say that it's another example of there is nothing really correct that is verifiable in the Quran, and anybody who tries to do that is very easily refuted. And this is why I think TJump, he was simply too bored with this, because he realized that everything was wrong. He realized there was nothing that was correct there, that Nadir wouldn't be able to do or justify anything of what he was claiming. And this is why he didn't put any effort into this. This is the impression that I'm getting.
And with me, what I've observed is, like, there's another policy TJump didn't point out, is called the God of the Gaps policy, where it's sort of like, oh, this can't be explained, therefore God kind of policy. Then there's also the cards are kind of stacked against TJump, so he has to be a bit careful here because of the channel itself and the questions he's going to be attacked more. what you guys brought up, which was excellent, is that challenge them on their claims a little more. Like, where's the evidence? Give me good evidence. That is, and I've personally done something like that too, where someone disclaimed that, oh, God is real. I'm like, okay, what's your evidence? And immediately this person backed away from the claim. After saying, a few things like, oh, look around you and all that stuff, I said, that's not good evidence. That's not good evidence. Give me better evidence. And then they immediately backed away, and they ended this conversation with, I do not wish to debate you, something along the lines of one should have blind faith. And, they also ended with, I don't need to read tons of books. Yeah, that was a statement. I don't need to read a ton of books. So it kind of goes to show that it's all, basically it can collapse like a pack of cards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. So yeah, I think I just want to send you something, Stops. Maybe you can bring this picture up. That is a spectacular picture I've just sent Stops now. And again, if something like that were in the Quran, right, they'd make all kinds of crap up about it. We do know exactly how that happens, etc. But I've just sent him a wonderful night shot. Maybe you can share screen there in a moment. I just popped it to you on Skype. So my closing thoughts are, I think there was nothing of substance that was brought there at all. This is vague and ambiguous stuff. He shoots himself in the foot by claiming that there are multiple interpretations. He is cherry-picking one. At no point did he give an explanation as to why he took that one and not the more straightforward version. And then also we heard all these buzzwords, right? That this is just simply false. This can't be coincidence. You're proving my point. You're agreeing with me. All of these sort of statements that are demonstrably false. But again, if you repeat it enough times, and I think it's very clear that it didn't matter what response was being given, he's just going to dogmatically hold. Stops has said it before. He's been on the Jinn and Tonic show years ago. He's still making the same claims. At least people like that. So there's a wonderful picture, by the way. Obviously, you know what that is in the background. For those who don't, that's the core of the Milky Way galaxy, and that is phytoplankton, bioluminescent phytoplankton in the water that gives off that blue glow. Now, if you were a Muslim in the 7th century, you might think that that's amazing and that must be a sign from God. Of course, now we know the science. Now, had the Quran said there was bioluminescent phytoplankton and explained what that is, that would have been something interesting. Now, again, compare that to anything that Nadir Ahmed said, and I think you can see that it's the difference is it's not even in the same galaxy. I think we're talking about light years away in terms of the difference between, and that's not a particularly super impressive claim. It's just a beautiful photograph, but we understand exactly what is going on there. But ignorant people would have made some crap up and attributed that to a god to explain why that's the case. So on that note, I think it's clear that I would never debate somebody like Nadir Ahmed unless I was paid, unless I had a very specific goal, which is not actually to converse with him at all, but really to speak to the audience in the hope that I can perhaps get some of them to rethink their ideas and point out that if you believe any of this, and I would do the same thing in regards to him. I'd be using keywords. Okay, he's just not thinking critically. If you're a gullible viewer, you will have taken on board what he said and you would have thought that's good, and I'm encouraging you not to be gullible and not to be hypnotic and not to take on board these vacuous claims. Right, it's now over to you. And I just keep repeating that over and over again. So counter his keywords with some of my own. That would be the only reason to do that. But if I wanted an intellectually honest conversation where there was some nuance to discuss, he'd be the last guy on the list that I would want to have a conversation with.
Okay, let's go to the Hadith. Can you hear this?
I can hear you, yes. No, I can't hear that. No.
Oh, no, we can't hear them.
Shit. I hate it. I don't know why this doesn't work. When I test it, it does, and then suddenly it doesn't. Let's try this one. Ready?
We can't hear this.
Nobody can hear that, Stops. I can't.
Oh, you can't hear this?
Nope. Nope.
If you put it into Chrome, you need to obviously tick that box for the audio.
Yeah,
right?
I did.
Yeah, it's not playing, so I don't know if the audio is down on your computer or there's no actual audio that's coming out of that particular video, or it's not compatible with Chrome.
Yeah, it could be a compatibility issue.
Okay, let me try again. Last time.
It was narrated by Ibn Jarir, narrated by Ibn Hamid.
Yep, we can hear that.
Through now.
There we go. There we go.
Narrated by Atta, narrated by Abu Dalhi, narrated by Ibn Abbas, who stated, "The first thing my Lord created, may he be exalted and glorified, was the pen. And he said to it, write. So the pen wrote all that will be until Judgment Day. Then Allah created the Nun, the whale, above the waters, and he pressed the earth into its."
So obviously it begs the question, what sort of pen was this and what did it write on? And where is this writing? And presumably a Muslim might come back and say, well, no, it doesn't really mean that. But then the question is, in what sense is this a pen, and exactly in what sense is it writing? We understand what a pen is. It's some device that normally has some sort of ink in it that then is written on some sort of paper or material such that some letters can come out. And if you're claiming that's not the case that happened here, then you're talking about something else. That I could have said the bibbledy bob did zibbledy zob, and it would be exactly the same thing.
Yeah. And like what's interesting is that the pen is just the starting point of the silliness. The silliness continues with the whale, with the earth on top of the whale. And I think even Matt Arab did something on this too. And I was like, yes, somebody finally did something on this. That you had the most famous scholars talk about the earth being on top of a whale for, I think, 400 or 500 years continuously.
Thank you very much.
It's quite silly, everything.
So on that note, I think all we do is expose how utterly mundane this is and how uncritical you have to be to believe this stuff. But most people have never read the Quran. Most Muslims have never thought about it in any way, and they just accept, as somebody like Nadir, right? Because that's how the brains have been set up to work, is to listen. Like I used to sit in the pews when I was very young in the Christian pews. I didn't really know what was going on. I mean, I heard the words and stuff, and I could comprehend the sentences, but I never asked if they were true or anything like that. And I think that's what happens with most Muslims. A, they've never read the Quran. B, if they have, they don't understand it. And C, they appeal to other people to tell them what they should be thinking about it. And as long as you do that, you don't need to invoke critical thinking, and then it's never a muscle that you're ever going to want to use. And so you are so easily and gullibly taken by something that could be plausible that you never stop to think, is it probable? And that's where the trouble comes in.
All right, ladies and gents and others, I hope you had some fun. I hope we gave you some entertainment. Thank you again to Bia for the wonderful intro. If anybody feels compelled to provide us with a beautiful, brilliant outro, that's also the bibbidi-bob. Thank you to the panel. Thank you to everybody who was involved. And we will see you on Discord, inshallah. Good night, everybody. See you next time. Next
Good night.
Friday. And leave us a thumbs up on the way out. Thank you.
Bye now.